Tom fucks. Public service announcement.
So, you know, especially after that we actually got to see Tom in the latest little clip.
And there has been nothing but thirst for Zaddy Tom.
Nothing but thirst.
Nothing but. That's where every server I'm in, everyone's just like, oh, I get where Moraine's coming from now. And I'm like...
I've also seen the thirst for both Nynaeve with her braid and the people who have been theorizing who Min would be. I can't remember what who it was now, but hold on.
I'm pretty sure that was announced.
Okay, so that was announced? Then never mind.
Yeah.
And that was definitely actual Min Thirst. I thought somebody said maybe, but I guess I'm wrong.
She's been cast. For
okay.
a while, and the thirst is real.
The thirst is real.
This is an incredibly hot cast, and I'm so okay with that. There's a bunch of critics like, oh, it's like a CW show. Everyone's too pretty. I'm like, first of all, shut up. Second of all, shut up.
We'll give them plenty of scars as the time goes on. It'll be fine.
Well, and it's one of the things I love that they're all bearded, because no CW show would have beards in it.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
Today we are joined by Cayla. You helped us out a lot at SpoilerCon and helped us raise quite a bit of the $3,500 that went to charity. And I just wanted to say, you know, we talked to you about an episode you wanted to be on, and you absolutely picked this one, and I'm excited to have you on.
Technically, we picked it.
Well,
we suggested it.
Yes. We auctioned off this particular chapter,
Yeah.
and Cayla was the winner. And now you're here.
and then you offered for me to choose anyone, and I'm like, no, the only other chapter I could think of is going to be like a couple months out. So I'm like, no, I still want to do this one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing, is there's not only a couple of big events in this one, and, you know, the Bowl of the Winds is, it's such a brief part of that chapter. I think that this is a more exciting one to have a guest on.
I was here for the live recording of Chapter 3, and in retrospect, that's probably the one I should have gone for.
Would love to have you on for that one. That was
Yeah. That was...
Yeah. That was deep. It was really deep.
Oh, yeah. No, I listened to the chapter on audiobook today, and I'm just like, wow, you guys really did cover everything. So it really helped for me to go through that one.
There's really nothing else in that chapter we didn't cover. We covered
was a
every
pretty thorough
word
chapter.
that was said. You really should. I honestly think that's the episode we should recommend to people if they want to know like what we do here at Watch Spoilers.
It's very representative of our style.
It is.
Yeah. That will be going live today for everyone in the audience who wasn't there for that. That's going live in like 2 hours. So you can discover what we're talking about.
Which means if you weren't live then and you are live now, you can go check it out. But if you're listening to this in a recording order, it came out quite a while ago because this is coming out after that one. So,
Something
you know,
like
it's... Yeah, no.
What is time?
So, welcome to the most useless PSA announcement ever.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of chapter, let's jump into it.
Big bada boom.
Big bada boom. Cayla, can I ask you to read us in? Is that something that you would be willing to do?
Yeah, let me open this up here.
This is a well-structured chapter. This one really, like, it's got a lead-up, it's got an action. Like, he wrote this chapter like its own little novel, which is why I think it's why we, like, wanted a guest on here. Because it's, like, it really has its own arc. It's just a good chapter. It's a good, solid...
It's got a beginning, middle, end. There's tension. There's resolution. Like, danger, magic.
Sacrifice, friendship,
Lions, dragons.
Lovers, friends, conflict.
This is Chapter 6, Threads, and our symbol is the Seanchan helmet.
Elayne ran too, of course holding her skirts up, and quickly took the lead on the well-worn dirt path. Only Aviendha stayed close, though she seemed to have no idea how to run in a dress. Divided or not, she certainly would have passed Elayne otherwise. Everyone else strung out behind them along the narrow, winding track. None of the Athonier would push by Ronalda, and despite her silk trousers, she could not move very fast, carrying the bowl hugged to her chest. Nynaeve had no such compunctions, elbowing past and running hard, shouting for people to get out of her way when she stumbled into them, whether they were the Windfinders, kinswoman, or Aes Sedai. Bounding down the hillside, tripping and catching herself, Elayne wanted to laugh despite her urgency. Despite the danger, lending her mother had always been death on running and climbing trees from the time she was 12, but not just the sheer pleasure of running again that made her delight bubble up in the middle. She had behaved as a queen was supposed to behave, and it had worked exactly as it was supposed to. She had taken charge to lead people out of danger, and they followed. Her whole life had been training for this. It was satisfaction that made her laugh, and the hot glow of pride seemed about to burst through her skin like the radiance of Sidar.
Well done.
Such an Elayne intro. That is just
Yeah.
Elayne in a nutshell.
They did what I told them to do. Yeah.
Maybe I can be queen.
I'm running downhill. I'm a fucking queen. Yes!
Yeah.
What's good you're feeling that now, Elayne, because you're about to be coronated very soon. Like, you're headed there now, aren't you?
There's a lot of just over the top with Elayne.
She's
a lot
so
of over
much.
the top with Elayne.
She's
Yeah.
so extra.
Okay. I do have to ask, though, when reading that second paragraph the first time, two things really jumped out at me. One of which was, what does death on running and jumping mean? Does that just mean, like, they were against it? Or,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
Okay, 'cause
Act ladylike. That is
Fair.
act ladylike. And it's fucking bullshit.
yeah, I guess I just never heard that turn of phrase before. So I'm just like...
Death on. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure I've heard it somewhere, but usually in like a medieval fantasy literature context. I don't think it's a normal phrase.
And then she mentions the fact that it was how she felt like it was the same as Sayadine.
Sidar.
The Sidar. And I actually just heard the analogy of how you tell the difference between Sayadine and Sidar. So my brain, like, as I said, I'm like, wait, no, I know that that's not how it's supposed to be said.
The rhymes really mess with you.
Yep.
Oh, mnemonics.
But yeah, so there is that I would say, we've done a lot of brain chemistry, and we know that like the burst of adrenaline you get from cocaine and exercise and accomplishing things and sex are all the same, right? It's all the same brain chemistry.
Dopamine.
Yeah. So
Well,
Sidar seems to be activating the same thing in your brain,
I mean, okay. I know it hasn't been mentioned so far in this recording, but I'm trans, and there's a word for what we've called it when we have those moments ourselves. It's euphoria, because it sounds exactly the same as the moment of the first time someone calls you ma'am, or like for my therapist who's a trans man, the first time being called sir, it was just like, oh. They told me that it's the exact same of just like shock of it worked. The thing I believe in myself people see me as. And like to know that that's also how it feels to have Sidar, it was like, oh, so that explains why they like it so much, because the euphoria feeling is amazing from personal experience. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the fact that the way she described it as they believed me, they followed my orders. Oh my gosh, maybe I can do this thing. Just like, Elayne, there are many things that I will criticize you for, but I get that feeling. I totally get that feeling.
Which is immediately followed by her pitching forward and face first into the mud, which I also get that feeling. That's when I get more, I think, a little bit. The pitching face first onto my face.
It's about par for the course. It's this is really good. Oh, and I'm able to humiliate myself immediately afterwards.
Now, it looks like Aradia has frozen.
Uh-oh.
Which is, she did mention that there was a storm rolling in and she might lose power. So it is entirely possible that we have lost Aradia for the duration of this recording.
Uh-oh.
That happened a lot sooner than she thought it was going to.
Alrighty then.
So it might just be you and me for the rest of this guy. We'll see. If she rejoins us, she rejoins us. But if we get no more Aradia for this chapter, that's why the weather did not cooperate, apparently.
I mean, that's what happens when you use the bowl of the winds. Mm-hmm. Everything kind of messes up.
I made the mistake of trying to have 3 people on the podcast. In Mother Nature, the pattern was like, no, 2 only. That's what you're sticking with. Well, I'm glad I've got you here then, because otherwise this would have been a very lonely recording. Are you ready to do you want to keep going with me?
That's fun, yeah.
All right, sweet. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to put the last minute pressure on you, but
Right. Let's see here. As Elayne falls down, she expects expects Birgitte to give her a bunch of trouble over that. You just mock her for not being very queenly.
their sister relationship, right?
Yeah.
But Birgitte remembers Falma.
She remembers Falma, and she definitely knows she can tell how panicked Nynaeve is, and definitely knows how panicked Elayne is, even with the excitement she has of, it's, people listen to me, but also we're leaving danger. So, we need to focus on that first. Because really, at the end of the day, the danger is, kind of more important than lecturing someone on tripping.
Right, and there's this sort of sisterly like ribbing that happens between them when there's no danger, but when there is danger, she goes into warder mode.
Yeah,
and that's a very different. That's that focused. The Birgitte as the arrow, focused and ready to fight.
That's one how you can tell Birgitte is still the Age of Legends hero, even with some of her memories fading.
Totally.
But also, like, it's that idea of it's a sisterly bond. Is nobody bullies my sister but me, especially not somebody who wants to put her on a leash.
So the next bit we get is a sort of account of the people in the farm. 147 kinswomen inhabit the Palace of Presence, including 54 red-belted wise women sent out days ago. And I was curious if you know what they meant by sent out? Sent out where? Sent out, like... if they're sent out, why are they at the farm? That very, very much confused me.
I assume that has to do with what they were talking about in the last chapter, where they were saying that this is where they would bring people in, so it'd be the retreat, but they'd also then have people rotate. Yeah, what Shaved Knight said is that they're rotating people through, and so this is some people who had been sent out a few days ago, and that was their time to finally be coming back here to be sent somewhere else, or
is it sent from the city, from Abu Dar to the farm? They were sent out from Abu Dar.
So they were walking on foot okay, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
They were sent out days ago, so they've been at the farm for a little while.
Yeah, as Shaved Knife Knee say again, so they don't notice the aging, because that's, as I said, even the moment the Aes Sedai start noticing it, they start going, wait, hold up. Like, that was that whole argument in Chapter 3, which was that, hey, we need to question these people. What's going on? They can't be telling the truth that they're this old. It's like, They must be dark friends. Don't call them dark friends again. I will cut you, is what it came down to. I mean, like, it was more of I will humiliate you, but it still was a very harsh rebuttal on that one.
Definitely. So they get to the farm, and everybody's running around, and what follows is pages of Nynaeve being humiliated by Elise, who's getting to everything before she does. It feels like a very humbling moment for Nynaeve.
Yeah. I guess the fact that I guess it's more humiliating that everything she can think of to make things work is just already done. But like normally that's what Nynaeve would live for, is the fact that somebody's taken her advice to heart or is capable enough that she can sit back. Then again, I'm not sure she can take credit for that, so maybe that's the reason.
I think she. One of the strategies we've seen Aes Sedai use to take control is that they tell you to do something that you were going to do anyway, but if they tell you to do it and then you do it, it feels like you're obeying them. And so I feel like Nynaeve is trying to use that method to get people to do what she says. But every time she's like, "Hey, can you go ahead?" Nope, done already. And like that undercuts her authority in a bunch of different ways. And she does not like the fact that her authority is being undercut here.
Fair enough.
And that's how I feel that like she's like, I should be in charge and you're taking charge. And I feel like I've been in that situation before in like a work meeting or something like that, where I felt like I was supposed to be in charge, but every time I like went to do something, someone was like ahead of me, and I'm like, why am I fucking here?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've had that happen. I get what you're saying there. That's always like, why did you assign this to me if you were just going to do all the work? But then also it's like, let's see if she can find my hat. And apparently she did. It's like, you don't want to burn yourself. It's like, I'm going to just pack this hat away. You just fuck that hat.
And the hat is my favorite B-plot of this chapter, right? If we talked about this being a complete story, the hat has its own little plot line, its own little story as it goes through, its own little like tie-ins to the main plot. It's absolutely wonderful. It's got there's other hats in that plot line with when you get to Elayne's hat.
Yes.
It's it's one of those things where it's very briefly mentioned, but this is one of those things I think about when I think about the kin, is the freaking hat. She found her hat.
It's such a small thing, but like because I first read it, was like, why is she so focused on her hat? And then it comes back, it's like, here's your hat. I found this for you. You should wear it so you don't get your sunburned. I'm like, oh my god. Nynaeve's about to be really pissed, and she's like, I'm just gonna pack this away. I was like, oh, okay.
And then when she's wearing it later, because actually she does need to wear it because she is going to get sunburned.
Yeah.
No, it's the resentment in her voice, and I can just, it's so good. It's so good.
Though it is fun that later on in the chapter, Nynaeve realizes she's already going to know what's going to happen, so I'm just going to sit back and let her handle it, because apparently I don't know anything extra.
Which is also not a good way to handle that emotion,
No.
right? You should still keep trying to help. You shouldn't like, well, fine, if I can't do everything, then I'll do nothing, right? That's not helpful. So, again, Nynaeve has matured a little bit. She's not always angry, but she still needs to continue to mature just a tiny bit.
Yeah.
Just a tiny bit.
It doesn't help that during the Bowl of the Wind, she got sassed pretty hard several times to the point where, oh, so I'm allowed to speak now? So the point where she's like, I want to, and then Elayne is able to use her authority and is like, I'm going to use mine, and then it keeps getting thwarted from under her. And is it this chapter, or was it just the last chapter where she was talking about how, please don't let me get this way around, because when I'm around Lan, I can't think of anything. When he's not around, all I can think of is Lan.
Not to mention, she just went through the use, basically being used as a huge sieve for power, right? As a Angreal, essentially. So she's exhausted. She's tottering over. Like, she's probably not thinking straight. She can barely stand up. Lan's about to catch her, right? Like, no wonder she's not on top of things. She needs to rest for like 2 days.
Yeah.
And I don't believe Elise was in the circle, right? She was actually
still at the farm the whole time. That's why she was all on top of everything. She had a head start.
Right.
The fact that Birgitte could tell from a distance exactly what was going on was just like, at least that got everyone. On that note, the fact that the small amount of clothing that they're getting them to pack is just like, yeah, we'll be back, I guess. It's 3 dresses. Was it 3 slips, 1 dress?
But there's a certain amount of, like, if you have to carry it, more clothes than that just become a burden.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like, and that's why as much coin as you can carry, definitely, because then you can always buy more dresses.
Yeah.
I don't think they anticipated just how hard the journey was going to be, especially with channeling and gateways.
Yeah. No, I think I took more clothes to SpoilerCon than they're taking right now. And
Definitely.
they don't really even realize they're never going home.
No.
Okay.
You did say she was a very capable woman, Elayne said, brushing her skirt. I never said that, and Nynaeve snapped. I never said very. And you do. You go back and you read the quote, and it's very much. She said, she's a capable woman. She does not say very in that quote. It's very true.
It is very much Nynaeve to remember the exact wording in that case.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the Aes Sedai-ness in her, right? That's the...
I'm not going to lie.
But I'm going to get around the exact... And Jordan, oftentimes he says, oh, women do this. And then he says, Aes Sedai do this. And it's like, well, but then women think that men do that. So, getting around the letter of your word is something that all of these characters do. And I think the Aes Sedai oaths prime them for it. But it's something all characters do.
Yeah, I think it was in the prologue to the last book where it was talking about, wow, I can't think of his name from the Children of the Light. He was stayed truthful no matter what, up to the point where it was like he had taken the oaths. But if you told him that, he would be very upset.
Yeah. Galad or
no, I think it was one of the people who, it was either the spy master or the guy who killed Valda. I can't remember. Yeah
Valda. Yeah, it's probably. I think I remember Valda because he does have sort of that weird honor about him.
Yeah.
It's like you're a douchebag, but then you stabbed a man Valda never killed Patron Nile, right?
Yeah.
Valda just set someone else up to kill him.
Yeah.
And then honorably stabbed that man for being a traitor. And then suddenly he's the Lord Commander. Gee, how'd that happen?
Yeah. Can never keep their names straight. It is just a word suit. Like, it's because with the children, it's like they don't matter though. It's
I've gotten there, right? Because I know that like Bayar is the one who was probably influenced by Grendel, and he's the one who then therefore hates Perrin.
right.
And then you've got Bornhald the Senior and Bornhald the Junior, and Bornhald the Senior died in the charge on the Seanchan, which is why Bornhald Junior wants to avenge him.
Right.
He's being convinced by Bayar, who is advisor to both. Then on the other side of that, you have the command structure, which is Pedro Nile, who was at the top, and then Valda and Asanawa. Valda being sort of the head replacement of the White Cloaks, and Asanawa the head of the hand of the White Cloaks.
Yeah.
There's
The ones with the questioners, yes.
The questioners, thank you. Yeah. Wow, we couldn't come up with that one. Yeah, so he was the head of the questioners.
So editing Aradia here, these two are just wrong about it being Valda. That's just wrong. It's Asunawa who never tells a lie, but can, I think the quote is, twist the truth until it screams or something like that. It's not Valda who doesn't lie. Valda lies all the time. It's Asunawa who is Aes Sedai-like in adhering to truth while also doing whatever the fuck he wants. Okay, editing Iridia out. Bye.
So that's sort of how I think of the structure, and those are really the only White Cloaks you need to know. It's sort of the 3 underlings and then the 3 guys in charge.
Okay.
And then, of course, obviously, Perrin's secretary, Balwer, but he doesn't really count. He's more of he's enough of a character. He's not a white cloak.
Yeah.
He just works for them.
He's just around.
Yeah. I'm not a Nazi. I just work for them.
Oof.
There's a little bit of a parallel that I could do with Balwer and the German scientists that came over to the U.S. and helped us with our rockets program.
Yeah, no, that's fairly accurate on the. Well, I mean, as long as our enemy doesn't have them. Because I mean, he could have gone to the Seanchan, and that would have been bad. But
that would have been real bad. Because think about the Seanchan with accurate information. A lot of their issues is that they just don't have accurate information and they make bad assumptions.
Yeah.
For example, the gateway as a weapon.
See, item number 1 in the thing that is the best use of the misunderstandings with the Seanchan.
Totally.
And just because we can't let them know how to make a gateway, which is, I say that it was worth somewhat of that risk, though Aviendha definitely took a lot more of that risk than expected.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, you could have gotten stilled with this? Why the hell did you stay?
There's a certain amount of but supporting her first sister,
yes.
Right? The odds of Elayne, who has never done this before, surviving go up drastically if she has her first sister who has done it and has experience, who can walk her through it and tell her what to do next.
Absolutely.
So there's a line here, she still felt a trifle odd herself, as though she could pluck little bits of Sidar out of the air around her. We've talked about that being the weirdness around Ebu Dar with the one power.
Yeah.
And we see that come up a lot as people channel, especially Rahn channels near, and whenever someone's channeling near the Seanchan, we sort of get that effect because the Seanchan are in Ebu Dar.
Yeah. And that kind of, the whole Bowl of the Winds has messed that whole area up for a while.
Yeah, totally. That area, and then all the areas where the big flows went through. The next thing I have is her sort of, being my precious over the ter'angreal. Just keep them, these are mine. Even the White Tower can't have them. There's definitely that sort of, Elayne, whoa.
Chill.
Crank chill a little bit. I'm glad you have some ter'angreal. Glad you get to use them, but they're, they are not yours.
But I might actually learn something if I have all of these ter'angreal. I can never let them go. Oh my god.
And, that's a great idea, but then you got pregnant and couldn't channel for, a bunch of months. So that's actually why she, has trouble studying ter'angreal for a long time, is she's just pregnant, and that interferes with her ability to channel.
And it doesn't help that she's in the middle of trying to also then solve all these other problems. No, I'll totally figure it out before the last battle. I'll have the kids before then, right? Well, not so much. No.
Well, kids before the last battle, you have to take over a country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That meeting with Rahn was not the greatest of timing. I mean, obviously it kind of needed to happen the way it did for all the other stuff, but, wow, did that not, that did not help Elayne at all.
Aviendha's timing was a little better in that situation.
Yeah.
She's like, wait till the night before the last battle to get pregnant. That's
that way it can't have already sort of to make things more difficult.
You know what I would have loved to have seen is how there was that time variation, the closer you were to the dark one, the slower time went. I would have loved to have seen Elayne gateway halfway, really far south.
Man,
have months pass, have her have the kids, and have them grow up while Rand's still battling the dark one.
Whoa!
And then come back and be like, all right, Rand, here's your support.
Here, I've come back with more channelers.
With more channelers for you.
The ones you've made. It's wait, what?
Yeah, I bred you some channelers.
Oh my god.
Because, I mean, you could do that with pocket dimensions, and we see what is when they punish Mogedion, they put her in a
Kursuvra?
Kursuvra. Yeah. Well, the Kursuvra is the thing, but they put her in a pocket world, a portal world.
Yeah.
Where time moves differently. Yeah.
Vacuum.
Vacuole. Thank you, Shaved Knees. Yep. Yeah, and I was Shaved Knees as well. I was about to say, just like in Angel, when Angel, his son, gets put into an alternate hell dimension and grows up there and then comes back, and then you have this adult child to fight with. I think I brought that up before. But yeah, I can see Rand doing that with Rand's kids. And supposedly they can hold the power 100% of the time, so...
Which is incredible, just to wow. I mean, I'm trying to remember, was that before Brandon Sanderson got a hold of it? Because that feels very anime.
No.
Okay.
That's a Sanderson thing. That's entirely... And it's also a Sanderson portal world alternate version that we don't know is true type thing.
Fair.
That's one of those things where I think that is entirely nothing in Aviendha's vision. I think happens.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, it's just like that with a few alterations, and I'm like, I think it's just way off. I think it's a warning of what could have happened, but we went down a totally different road.
Yeah.
For one thing, like I can't imagine the Seanchan society not imploding with the news that the nobles are also
Channelers.
Yeah.
Or whatever the heck Arthur Hawkwing told
Yeah.
Tuon.
The idea that that's the future just ignores everything that happened in the last battle, which is kind of the point, right? The whole point of that is that, like, based on where things are now,
Yeah.
this is what happens. But
It's not set in stone.
it's not set in stone. Things are totally different.
Yeah.
So, and I do believe in the Terran Grial creates a feedback loop, right? So they change things, and then you go into the loop, and it says, well, now things are going to go bad in this way. So then the next person can go in and make changes. And so there's this sort of the wise ones become wise because they basically have an idea of how they need to change the present to avoid a disastrous future.
It does mean that they will probably get a little bit more of an ego than they've had before, but, like, if they can keep some of their old traditions, I hope that they at least be able to mellow each other out on that one.
And they have a purpose now,
Yeah.
right? They are the peacekeepers of the Dragon's Peace.
Fair enough, yeah. And, it'd be on the same level as if, people couldn't veto whatever the UN did. It's like they could actually go and do stuff.
If the UN had an actual, like, peacekeeping force that wasn't just the U.S.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And, that, like, anytime that there's a international court decision, people actually had to follow it.
Right.
Like, that's what this is. This is like an international community that works, or at least can work. There's always the chance for that to fall apart, too, immediately. But, everyone has the incentive to go with, to have not only if we try to break it, not only do you have to have to fight the Aiel, you have to fight all the other nations. Yeah, maybe not.
Right.
Though.
Well, and that was sort of the idea behind NATO, right? Was this sort of the mutual defense, like if you invade one country, you invade us all.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a certain amount of, this is basically NATO that he's trying to form. There's some differences, but they're mostly world-based. The idea behind them is very much similar, which is a mutual protection pact.
Yeah.
And, like, keeping your borders steady.
It's NATO if you had the USSR join.
Right.
Like, on the edge, it's like, hey, you also have the Soviet Union join as well? Have fun with that. What?
And, there's a reason the Gang of 8 or whatever has become the Gang of, or what was 9, a group of 9 became the summit. There's all these summits, right? And they give them all sorts of stupid names. And recently they kicked Russia out of one of them.
Yeah.
Because of
G8, I think it was.
the G8, that's what it was. Yeah, the G9. It used to be the G9.
No, it's the G7 now, I think.
Okay. Well, yes, the G7 was the G8.
Would be funny if they called it the G8 still and just either grabbed another country or they just said, nah, Russia's just not allowed to participate this year. It's just like, wow.
The G8 was short for great. It had nothing to do with the number of countries. They're great.
Oh my gosh. There, it's Tony the Tiger. They had to license him out.
Well, they are frosted flakes. That's for damn sure. Most politicians.
I've never heard that comparison before, but you're not wrong.
All right, so we are getting ready to evacuate. They send Kareen running to the top of the hill, and I want to mention her because she's the Dark Friend, and I like that they sort of banish her to be the lookout so she can't mess with stuff. They don't realize it, but I think it does make things go a little more smoothly because she's grumbling to herself because she's like, oh, I don't want to be banished to just be the lookout. Like, I can't fuck things up.
Yeah, though, I think the only reason that she would have even messed with anything is as long as she didn't know what the Seanchan were capable of because the moment you find out, oh, you'll be put in a leash, you're like, you know what, I will comply. I will not... The Dark One ain't saving me from that.
Being a Dark Friend doesn't help with that,
No.
right? Like, no, there's nothing. They're like, oh, well, you shouldn't have got yourself in that situation. Have fun.
See ya. I wonder... Yeah, well, we have seen some Dark Friends in the Seanchan, though, haven't we? I'm trying to remember... Well, not so far.
Surith.
Oh, right, yeah, right, of course. I'm like, there is one, but who was it? Because I'm trying to think that they wouldn't treat them very well, but it's like, oh, right.
The first one we met. And the craziness with the hierarchy means a Dark Friend can make anyone below them just obey unquestioningly, even if they're doing Dark Friend things.
Yeah, that's a bit of a worrisome ability to be able to have for Dark Friends. Which is also why, now I'm trying to remember which was the chosen or the Forsaken that made it into the Seanchan.
Simrog.
Yeah, there you go, yeah. She got way high up. That didn't work.
Yeah.
Nobody really worked out with that one.
No, and then when she decided it was a pain in the ass, she just killed everybody who was, part of the Empire.
Yep.
Let's see. The next thing I have, there's some more stuff about Elise, the hat stuff we talked about. And then there's sort of there's a shouting match over the Angreal, the turtle Angreal, that Talon used. Apparently, Renala had stashed that behind her belt. So it did end up back in Mirel's care. So that did end up back with the Aes Sedai. But eventually we do find out it ends up back with Elayne long term. So
Yeah. That was the lecture of, you're not supposed to be a thief. Stop it.
yeah.
It's like, fair. You gotta have... Wait, who... actually, hold on. Where was it? Who was lecturing who on being a thief? Was that Sean, Seafolk to Seafolk? Or I'm on the wrong page, actually.
No, that's Elise, who's
Right.
running
Oh my
everything.
gosh. She's
is lecturing this. So you got Kin lecturing Seafolk, basically.
Which is perfect. I love it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we're just not going to screw with her. She's not part of anyone else's she's part of the kin, but nobody's going to cross her at this point. Like, fair.
And, this is one of those reasons why I think the Seafolk are really viewed, like, poorly. Is, like, why did you try and steal this shit? Like, that doesn't seem to fit into the Seafolk that we have with the bargains and all that kind of stuff. Like, it seems like they would want to honor the bargain and the loan of the turtle. Like, that... I think the Seafolk are often just weirdly written.
Yeah, it could just be that they took it as, here, you use this, and it's like, oh, I get to use this forever. That's the bargain. Okay.
Right.
And it's like,
Right.
no, that was
Stretching the
not
word.
the bargain. You don't get to steal that. It's like,
Well, you didn't say when I had to give it back. Yeah, that sort of stretching of the truth of the bargain. The Seafolk do it in their own way. They don't stretch the truth, but they stretch the bargain.
Yep.
As far, like, very much the letter of the bargain. In a lot of ways, the same way the snakes and foxes like to do it.
yeah. And, you didn't name when it was going to be back, so I just assumed it was a gift, like, because everyone else would have told me from my culture, so why would I assume you'd mean anything different?
Totally.
So it doesn't come off as stealing until they're told, no, we need that back. And then they're like, oh, okay. But yeah, the sea folk seem to be getting on everybody's nerves in this one, but I guess par for the course for them.
So Elise gets everybody lined up, and Elayne goes to open the gateway because Nynaeve is ridiculously exhausted and also hasn't been running around and so doesn't know the hilltop as well as Elayne does. And we get sort of this first use of the one power in the post-bowl era. So the flows wavered in her grasp, almost if trying to twist free, then snapped into place so suddenly that she jumped. And I see this description a lot is, oh, the flows jumped right out of my hands, or the flows snapped into place, or there's seems to be that, like, that final finishing weave. It's almost like the pattern is like, all right, get it done with already. Come on.
Yeah. It sounds like one of those unfolding tents you have. They're supposed to be easy to just pop out. The pop tents. And, like, if you're not holding it right, it just pops straight out of your hand. I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh.
Ooh, okay, I guess that's what I was trying to set up. Like, but it's startling every time, right?
Yep, yeah, that was just, especially because if you're tired, you're not holding on to it well. Because I had a friend who was going to, I can't remember what music concert it was a few months ago, but they were trying to make sure the tent they had bought would work just fine, and so they set it up in their house, and they're like, I can't get it to close. They barely fit it through their doorway, and so we kept, like, struggling with it the entire time to fold it correctly. But every time we just hold it just the wrong way, it just pops straight out of our hands, and we'd have to go and catch it and start over again, even though it's a one-person tent. So, yeah, if you're tired, I can see how that might be exhausting to try to do something like that has a mind of its own.
Do you know what else that reminds me of? Do you ever have those, like, circular windshield shades that have two circles in them, and you fold them over, and then you do that weird, like, one hand over the other fold, and they're supposed to, like,
Twist
and they twist into each other?
Yep.
That sort of, and then, like, when you pull them out, it pops up, and I imagine it popping up just like these weaves do. Like the gateway does, So back to the chapter, away from photovoltaic reactions, because guess what they don't have in the Wheel of Time?
Electricity of any kind.
They're working on it. The schools are coming pretty... I think there actually is one of the experiments in Rand schools generates electricity, if I remember correctly.
If nothing else, they do have a steam train, which is the most common way to this day that we can produce electricity, is using different things to power steam engines. So
Yeah. Steam spins a turbine, the turbine spins a electromagnet, and that creates electricity.
and then coal power uses steam engines, and so does nuclear power.
Right, absolutely. So she makes the gateway, and she makes the gateway to one of her estates in Camelin, but that's still a week away. A 2-week ride from Camelin.
Far enough away that nobody's going to see them, but close enough that they will sneak up on them before anyone knows what's coming.
Right. So she's, sorry, I said Camelin. Her estate's in Andor.
Yeah. Let's see. Nynaeve gets picky about that it looked like it was about to fall.
And this is really the beginning of Elayne's journey to becoming queen, right? Like, this is when she makes the decision, opening the gateway to Andor, as opposed to anywhere else, is saying, hey, I'm done. I've got the Bowl of the Winds. I'm basically Aes Sedai. You know, I've done everything. I've completed my side quests. It's time to go on take on my main task. The thing I ran away from home. Not ran away from home, but basically she ran away from the White Tower to get away from the responsibility of being queen.
And I mean, really, when she left Saladar, technically she should have also gone, like, back to Camelin, but, like, she's now aware that, really, I kind of need to do this.
Yeah, no, there was that definite, like, don't go to Abu Dar to save the world when you should be, like, becoming queen. That would have been better use of your time. There was also the amount, like, she definitely underestimated the amount of time it would take to go get the Bowl of the Winds.
Oh, just 10 days.
Yeah, exactly. They thought they were going to ride in there, you know, get it, and, you know, they made bets that they were going to find it right away, and then she figured she'd gateway to Camelin, and it would be, like, 2 weeks from start to finish. But then, of course, getting stuck on the road for months leads to a bunch of problems. The amount of time it took in Abu Dar was definitely longer than she thought. But at the same time, she has gateways. So on one level, it's like, okay, the queen disappears. You kind of expect it to take 6 months for the replacement to travel in from a foreign country.
Yeah. Although, to some extent, you're like, you probably should have headed straight here, but also the fact that you can travel that fast, you know, negates the problem of waiting that long. Because It's not like any of your competition has that. If it was everyone had these gates, yeah, you should have been there the next day. Right. But in this case, everyone probably would have suspected you would have taken this long. So the fact that you also came in tow with the kin kind of is a boom for you. Because you're going to be able to say, and I brought all these people who can heal for our entire city.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like what I think about American, like the 1800s, when we had like the Louisiana Purchase or an Oregon Trail. Like, the time it took news to get to the West Coast that something had happened on the East Coast politically would often take months and months for that, even the news that we had like a new president or who it was, to get out there. So, you know, it doesn't seem crazy to me, especially a country like Andor, which is gigantic across the entire continent.
Yeah.
That, you know, it takes months for news to spread, much less for someone to come back.
Oh, yeah. Even travel time, like I saw recently a map about how far in 1914, how long it would take from London to travel anywhere in the world. And like anywhere in Europe was like 5 days. To San Francisco would have taken probably 5 to 10 days. But there were places like in like South America, Africa, and Asia that would be more than a month and a half for each of those. And that was with planes, trains, and automobiles. And I say that just to reference the movie that I've seen.
No. I appreciate that.
So even with that, there's still places that people just could not get to. And I mean, heck, there's still places, there are mountains that exist now that you still can't, that no one's been to the top of. And we know that no one's been there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so for, you know, crossing a continent probably would have taken her plenty of time. So the way gates, significant ace in her back. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, gateways definitely saved her a ton of time. So I wanted to ask about this line. With luck, she could have a solid base established by the time Egwene and the others arrived. That never made any sense to me, because aren't Egwene and the others going to Tarvalon, not to Camelin?
I assume she believes they're going to be traveling through Andor, and if it's a debate about who's in charge, that would mean that there might be something breaking out. But if there's a solid queen in charge, especially one that knows her, either A, she can let them through, or send an army with them.
I guess it didn't occur to me that, yes, if they were marching from Saladar to Tarvalon, they would have to pass right through Andor and probably Camelin.
Yeah. But
they gateway past all that.
Nobody assumes that you could, even people who know how to gateway, no one assumed that they would gateway that many people.
Yeah, the army. That's a good point. So, okay, that makes more sense. Like, why does she think Egwene's heading her way? It's like, oh, because she's on the way to Tarvalon. That's what's going on there.
Yeah, either we can assume that Egwene has not told anyone she's planning to gateway on it, or has not figured that out yet. Either way, Elayne sure doesn't know.
So the next bit is basically them going through the gateway.
Yeah.
Right? They go through the gateway. Elise makes a comment about Elayne's hat so she doesn't turn all wrinkled. Aviendha laughs, and Elayne is like, well, maybe I'll give you a hat with a bunch of feathers. Right? So there's that funny interaction there. But sort of this, it's a bit relaxing. They're all through. Everything seems fine.
Yep.
We get that moment from Nynaeve where she's like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and let Elise deal with the sea folk. I'm done washing my hands. We talked about that a little bit. And then we get this. Elayne drew a deep breath. She had thought about this, and there was no other way, but now Nynaeve would try and argue her out of it, and there was no time for arguing. Through the gateway, the farmyard stood empty, even the chickens finally frightened away by the hubbub. Yet how long before it filled up again? She studied her weave, melded together so snugly that only a few strands remained distinct. She could see every flow, of course, but except for those few, they appeared inseparably combined. Take everyone to the manor house, Nynaeve, she said. The sun did not have very much further to fall. Perhaps 2 hours of light remained. Master Horn will be surprised by so many visitors arriving. Da-da-da. Elayne plucked one of the discernible threads free of the weave. It wavered and flailed like a living tentacle. It fuzzed and splintered, tiny fluffs of Sidar breaking off and fading away. So that's the first step, the commitment of this is what she has to do. She's not going to hear any arguments against it. She's going to do what Aviendha talked about, which was unraveling the weave.
Yeah. And I mean, had she tried to explain it to Nynaeve beforehand, Nynaeve would have probably tried to pull her straight out of that and say, no, you're not doing that. I will not let you. And Elayne's like, well, if I start, I can't stop, so let's just do it.
Right. What Aviendha doesn't explain is, like, yes, anyone can be taught, but, like, you're attempting an expert level thing for something that, like, you have to build up to that. You can't just... There's essentially zero chance that she's going to be successful.
Yeah.
From start to finish.
I mean, the fact that they are not dead nor stilled is extraordinary luck.
Thank you, pattern.
Yep.
Yeah. But, like, I really, really do think that there is zero chance of Elayne finishing this successfully, and that Aviendha knows the entire time that basically whatever happens will happen, and there's nothing she can do, and she's just going to suffer the same fate as her sister.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. If somebody did that for me, I would be like, yeah, okay, if you want to get married, let's get married. Let's, whatever you're wanting, I'm up for it. You obviously care.
At that point, our lives are tied together.
Yeah.
If I had died, you would have died. Like, we would have both, you risked your life for mine, right?
You have made it clear you care quite a bit, so...
Right, exactly.
There is no doubt left.
And I think that is one of the main points of this chapter, is the bonding between the two of them. As they go through hell, they put each other's lives on the line for each other, and it gives them the trust that they didn't have before.
And, I mean, I think that's another half of the reason why it's called Threads is... because the thread of their life, so to speak, like the what was it, the red string of fate, I think is the Japanese folktale. But yeah, it's basically two people tied together. But in this case, it's both the untying of a weave and also the fact that they are definitely on the same part of the pattern.
I looked up Master Hornwell, who's the head of the estate. We never hear about him again. He's a one chapter, one name, one mention person.
We don't even see him.
Yep. He gets a name. Apparently, he's got a backstory.
Oh yeah. The fact that it is the name has a backstory is very clear by the fact that it's like, tell him this specific thing, he will know who I am. It's like, okay, all right. That's a story we'll never get to hear, but, I mean, it's probably just as clear as it sounds.
Could be just a small one-sentence backstory, but still a backstory.
Yeah.
So Nynaeve shows up and is like, all right, put that thing back where it came from, or so help me. Like... and Avi's like, hey, you can't. Like, that badger is out of the bag. There's no way to put that back.
It's winter night all over again.
It really is.
Let's see. Yeah, so what if one of the Damanes had the talent to read residues? Yeah, no, that would have absolutely, had it not been for the fact that they were just going to pick up a damane who could use a gateway by chance, then yeah, this would have been probably a lot more worth it. Because it at least delays them for a few months.
It does. And you also have the
explosion.
Yeah. That's the other thing. Like, there's two things going on here. The reading of the weaves that gives them gateways, which they don't get until the raid against, when they capture Elaida. Elaida for sure gives them gateways if nobody else does. And then the weapon, which keeps them, and that's an unexpected consequence.
Yeah.
They were trying to accomplish the first one, which is not let them have gateways, but they have sort of the second, not goal, but second result.
Yeah.
Of fooling them.
It's a secondary effect. It helps.
Mm-hmm. And I love Nynaeve before she rides off. You be careful, you hear me? If you get yourself killed, I swear I'll skin you alive. Which is just the Nynaeviest Nynaeve saying ever.
I feel that she would definitely try too. I feel like she would definitely I figured out how to kill people from stilling. I will figure this out.
Oh, you're dead? I'll bring you back and skin you alive. No problem.
Then again, technically, Birgitte was dead, and they just pulled her straight out of the world of dreams. Maybe they'll just go find her there. Because I know Nynaeve would be pissed enough to give it a shot, at least.
That's true. There is a very real. If Birgitte died, there's a very real chance that Nynaeve could skin her alive, still, and anyone else who was a hero of the Horn.
Yep.
Just blow it, and well, Birgitte does get kind of supercharged when she's a hero of the Horn.
Fair enough.
Like that we get that saying when she says, I think we skimmed over this, when she says my bow is the regular type today.
Yep.
Referring to Falma, where her bow was not, where her bow was super powerful, she was invincible, she could be immobilized, but essentially couldn't be killed, and was able to like
Loose as many arrows as physically possible.
yeah, super fast and there's all sorts of advantages to being a hero of the Horn that essentially make you, essentially you're still part of the dream, which means you can alter reality around you. You can always have more arrows in your bow. You can always teleport. You can always there's a little bit of like these heroes become
Yeah.
which okay, so side tangent, which the whole what I think happens in both the Last Battle and the Great Hunt is when you blow the horn doesn't really bring heroes back to life. It just merges Teleron Riyadh and the real world together. And so the heroes who are still technically in Teleron Riyadh can influence the real world. It's the opposite of going into the world of the flesh. It's the world of dreams coming into our world in the flesh, if that makes sense.
Which goes back with that previous theory, the fact that it's supposed to be something that has basically existed as long as the universe. If that's the case, like, at that point, that's essentially a Turan Grial of one way or another, so maybe there are some that are also naturally occurring as well. I mean, I'm trying to think of what else could have been occurring like that we just have forgotten existed, but...
The horn is interesting because it's got that spiral in the curve, and I think that's basically the spinning of the wheel itself in the horn, and so that's that whole when you blow it, the air goes around that circle, and that's why you're sort of reenacting the wheel of time with the horn as the wind that you're blowing. Also, a wind arose in the horn,
just like at the beginning of every book. There we go. It all comes
like
back
at the beginning of
around.
every book, yeah. So there's just it really does. So yeah, there's a certain amount of, I feel like the horn and the wheel were created at the same time by the same person, in my opinion. I don't think it's Taran Grial. I think it's a artifact of the world. It's like to bring up an MCU, it's an Infinity Stone, right? It existed at the beginning of time. It always existed. It was created. Whatever created the world created the horn inside of it.
Fair enough. And even though it was way before Elayne knew what she was doing with Turan Grial, she has seen the horn back in book 2, at the end of book 2, before book 3. So she would have at least been able to recognize that much, even if she...
Yeah, I don't think anyone ever says it's a Taran Grial.
Fair enough, yeah.
It's just the horn, right?
I mean, if nothing else, someone would have noticed that before now. That would have made it in one of the legends. So, yeah, fair.
And also, you can copy Taran Grial. So there would be copies of the horn.
Ooh, and that would not be good news.
So I really do think it's a unique object. It's not a power-created object in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. My first thought was just the fact if we are just pulling the world of dreams into the world of the living, it felt like one of the Turan Grials to actually go visit the world of dreams, but it seems to be on a different scale entirely.
It does, yeah. I think in a lot of ways it may actually be sort of the corporeal representation of the world of dreams, right? That's sort of the way it wraps around the world. And, I don't know. It's see, now we can start getting into avatars of because we have the three constants. So you have the Dark One, the Creator, and Teleron Riyadh. Those are the three sort of constants of our universe. We hear, I think Varen tell us about that.
Yeah.
When she introduces the ring.
Yeah.
Taran Grial. And so we know we've got the avatar of the Dark One, which is Shadar Haran. We have the avatar of the Creator. We can argue with me about that, but I think it's Rand, because he's the one who, the land is linked to him, and as the Dark One gets more powerful, he gets more powerful in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
But then you have to have an avatar of the third constant, which is Teleron Riyadh. And so the horn.
I mean,
Or Nakomi.
yeah, I was gonna say, unless it's Nakomi all the way out in the desert, which explains why she knew everything that was going on. Just like, I already know what's gonna happen. I could already predict all of this. Here, your future kind of sucks. Let's not do that one.
I mean, how much... I mean, so this is my opinion, that Nakomi, as a wise one of the Gen Aiel, in the creation of Ruidian, merged with Teleron Riyadh and became an avatar of the third constant. And that's how she survived long after the rest of the Gen Aiel died. She was actually an avatar of the third constant. and was bound in Ruidian.
Okay. And so and so being for the one for Tel'aran'rhiod, time is not a big deal there.
Right.
Cool, yeah,
Totally.
okay. Because I was going to say, how did she survive, or how did they merge? Just like, well, probably the same way Slayer did, if there's any kind of merging physically, but Tel'aran'rhiod doesn't care either way. It'll do whatever it feels like.
Right. And that's why she's only actually able to talk to Rand after the horn is blown, because there's that mixing of Tel'aran'rhiod in the real world during the last battle. And also, the only other time we see her is when she talks to
Aviendha.
Aviendha, thank you. Aviendha, I'm convinced Aviendha falls asleep before that conversation. There's a moment where she closes her eyes and puts her head back, and then she opens her eyes back up, and there's Nakomi sitting there, and it's like, yeah, you fell asleep.
I mean, that is a movie trope of someone falling asleep and not realizing they're asleep. So, like...
Exactly.
And Robert Jordan has pulled from so many other sources. I don't feel that that's a denigrating to say he pulled it in this case. It's a, did they now? Do they now? I'm not going to tell you. That's the fun part here, is you get to find out.
And that's a little Sanderson for me, too, because I think Sanderson wrote the encounter with Aviendha and Nakomi. I think Jordan wrote the Nakomi talking to Rand. But I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, for all we know, it could have been Robert's notes just to say, so they'll meet her at this place, but it's in the dream. Don't make it obvious. Mm-hmm. And just like, okay. And this is Branderson's interpretation of not obvious. So it's like, which is fair because nobody else is sure.
It's definitely not obvious.
No, yeah.
No. So every woman who can channel is freaking out because there's this like whipping snake, and a lot of them are either totally confused or, what the fuck is going on with that? And as we see, Morden was freaked out about that too, right?
Yeah.
Like when Aviendha did it. And that's an interesting, because we do see Morden's point of view when Aviendha unravels it, and that gives us a bit of a sense of danger here. Just how dangerous is the situation? Well, even Morden is terrified of what Elayne just did. That's the kind of danger she's throwing herself into without like a second thought. Yeah.
And I mean, in the Age of Legends, there's no really good reason to do that other than if I don't want someone to follow directly behind me in a gate. Otherwise, like, everybody can look up whatever weave you're learning with very few exceptions. So like, what's the point of putting that huge of a risk on yourself?
Right. Yeah.
So he's probably like, they probably weren't the IO probably weren't the first to figure it out, but like in the Age of Legends, they probably just said, you know what? No, we're not fucking with that.
That was just one more dangerous thing that was probably forbidden. It's like, don't unravel weaves. That kills people. And it's only in our sort of more modern or gritty era where people die from all sorts of things, and necessity is often the mother of invention, that you end up with these sort of unweaving and other things that happen like that.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's as you said, necessity, but it is I can't think of anything else. We're in desperate need. Fuck it, let's find out. Let's do it. Like, because I don't even know why the Aiel learned that. Like, do they have any benefit from doing that? Because I don't think that the wise ones hide stuff from each other. Is there a benefit? I can't think of anything off the top of my head that anyone mentions.
Yeah, me neither.
I think it's just something that somebody started screwing around and found out how to use it.
It's just a skill that they practice.
Yeah.
Birgitte says to Elayne, if you ever treat a man half as well as you do that horse, he'll be yours for life. Which I think is incredibly ironic considering the horse dies at the end of the chapter.
That's even Brigitte's like, sorry, he's dead.
Sorry. Yeah, he's like, yeah, so yours for his life, maybe.
Yeah. It's a very interesting parallel for Rand. You treat Rand this well, he'll marry you, and then, let's not talk about that second part.
Then he did. And then, yep. And the other thing that Aradia pointed out to me before we started recording, she named her horse Lioness. And we got that whole chapter where Perrin was making fun of that dude for naming his horse Lion. And we dug into him hardcore for being this like, oh yeah, you ride a lion, don't you? And never realizing the whole time, here's Elayne being like, oh yeah, I'm on Lioness. Like, oh, here's my Lioness that I'm riding. And it's like, it's the same sort of like ridiculousness of like, it's a horse, not a lion.
True. But she is supposed to reign on the lion throne. So she's already gonna be on a lion, so to speak, anyways. So it's just like,
that was my comeback to Aradia's. I was like, yeah, but yeah, she is already, the lion throne is already kind of riding a lion already. That makes sense that like, and that's sort of why we probably never commented on it before, is like it makes a lot of sense for her to be riding that horse. But there is that sort of same like, oh, you're riding a lion, are you?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I actually forgot about that, how much, yeah, because I forgot completely about the horse named Lion, I'll be honest.
Yeah. I did too until, like I said, a radio brought that up. I was like, oh, that's great.
Oh my gosh. So what does slick mean? Well, I mean, I mean, it sounds pretty self-explanatory to me of try to grab onto it. Actually, I think about it, it's a cat who doesn't want to be picked up. It's like, nope, no, I'm going somewhere else now.
Yeah. They describe it as a live eel with grease. Watermelon with Vaseline. I mean, pick your analogy, right? Like,
yeah, no.
it's slick. And she is exhausted.
Yeah. That can't help in this case.
No.
Because she keeps describing how she can barely hold on. She can barely do what she's doing right now.
Robert Jordan loves to do this to his characters, is put them on the edge of exhaustion and then make them do something really, really strenuous, right? That Rand's whole fight with Asmodean was the day after he was like super hungover. He got really drunk. He got no sleep. He was like, he had just done all this channeling. Like I remember the morning he gets up and he goes to fight in Rudian. He is just beat the fuck up. Like he is barely standing that entire day. And then he goes and fights a Forsaken.
I think that's like half of the battles Rand has at the beginning. Like, definitely at the end of Dragon Reborn, he's been without sleep for like a month. He's climbed into the Stone of Tyr barehanded, and then proceeds to face off against one Forsaken, and then fight Shamael just through the world of dreams. And then there is the battle in Camelin where he just came off from watching Lanfear and Moraine fight, and so he's emotionally just gone. And then, oh look, there go Aviendha and Matt. Fuck. So yeah, like he was easily at his wits' end for both of those fights.
Just beats the hell out of him.
I think it just shows how hard he's trying to make, like how amazing it makes these characters look doing simple things by comparison, and then later we can believe they do these amazing things. Like if they can do all this other stuff exhausted, this is nothing.
All I'm saying is you can't age these characters up too much because this is a young person's game. For sure.
Fair enough.
This is not something that, no 40-year-old Rand is going to be doing that running.
I don't know how they're going to portray Lan as both, whatever the age they're going with on that one, and then just like, oh yeah, I'll just keep up with Rand. It's no big deal.
Magic.
Oh my gosh.
Water magic.
Water bond, yes.
Which does help Rand quite a bit in some of the later books. Like, we don't talk... he doesn't think about that a lot, but he is getting a huge benefit from the endurance, the ability to not sleep, all that kind of stuff. Like, there's a reason he survives that better than most. It's because he's got the water bond with Alanna.
Yeah.
No idea if the water bond is better with, like, multiple people. That would be interesting if it's, like, he gets stronger and stronger every time someone bonds him.
Yeah, and that's what actually surprised me. I thought that whole ceremony where they bonded all three in the ceremony together, I thought that was another water bond. And then, like, people keep saying, no, that's just the ceremony itself. I'm like, but they could feel each other. What? Why not? Like,
it's almost its own unique thing, right? Because it's a combination of the water bond with the first sister ceremony that the Aiel do. So and both of those involve the one power.
Yeah. And
so this is a third sort of bond created out of a combination of the two of those bonds. So they all became first sisters, right? Which is how Min was included in the bond.
Yeah.
And then as a unified first sister unit, they water bonded Rand.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So there was still a water bond in there because I felt like I had read it and it was like, sounds like it's still a water bond somewhere in there. But every time I hear the podcast, it's like, it's not enough. You only get the water bond once. I'm like, I don't know.
But it's weird. It's not exactly the water bond because it's that link to three people, and it seems to have more precedence over his water bond, and also like it happens so late in the series, we don't really get a lot of information about how it affects him.
Yeah.
Because he just sort of goes up to the mountaintop and has his moment of clarity and comes back down and is like, yeah, I'm good now.
Yeah.
I figured everything out. There's no more mental problems. There's no problems around being bonded with Moradin. There's no problems around the one power. There's no problems around, all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, that's not problematic at all. No. Though from my own past experience with depression, I think that like what Robert Jordan was trying to do with that whole Veins of Gold was, I finally aware that I have a problem, so I can push it to the back for now, and then afterward, because there were moments when I fully started to decompress through my own depression that I've had for years, and then there was like, so what I've been doing is unhealthy. I need to work through all of this, but I'm doing better now that I can at least not do worse things. So let's focus on this thing now. But like that, it does portray like everything's fixed now. Bye.
I had a similar problem with my anxiety where it was like, once I realized that a lot of my issues were caused by just social anxiety that I was not controlling well, I was able to then compensate for that. It didn't stop me from having the social anxiety. It didn't stop me from reacting poorly sometimes, but I could be like, oh, now I know what this is. I can either take myself out of the situation or, you know, at least not freak out that I'm like, wait, why am I doing these crazy things? It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, because my rational brain, I'm sure as you're aware with anxiety and depression, your rational brain's like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I understand from a white Ajah point of view that, like, I shouldn't feel this way.
Yeah.
But I still feel this way.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah. And knowing and not knowing what it is a nightmare that I think a lot of people with mental health go through, where they're just like, I don't understand what is going on with me. I don't understand why I feel the way I do. And getting a diagnosis, getting an answer, getting a category can make such a difference, even without
anything else,
any treatment or felks. Yeah, absolutely.
Giving it a name means that it has less power over you.
Totally. Absolutely.
The fact that mental illness is like Rumpelstiltskin hurts me. Like, it's like, we have named you. Go away now.
Yeah, but it's the difference between I'm damaged and there's this thing that I have.
Yeah.
That is not me. That is affecting me.
It's like the taint on Rand's brain. It's all over there. Once you see it's there, you're like, oh, all right, let's fix that, and maybe the crazy man goes away from your head. Though that whole... Actually, I had a friend, the same friend who just read through Lord of Chaos finally. He's like, so Rand does have a voice in his head, or is that someone separate? Like, I had to, like, without spoilers, try to explain to him, no, it's not really a separate person. But I mean, like, I can't explain that we also watch him merge with the voice later on. I can't spoil any of that. I'm like, ah.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the central questions of the books is Lewis Theron a real person? Rand's convinced it is, or is it just a voice in his head? Which I'm convinced it is.
Yeah.
You know, so and some people still argue with me over that. You know, despite I think Brandon made it very, very clear in the last 3 books that it was just a voice, especially when he merged. Yeah. Right? There is no... Rand says repeatedly, it was always me. I am who I am. I've never been anybody different. Like, he's so explicit about it. It's hard for me to argue the other side or see anybody argue the other side. True,
though. Before I listened to the podcast, I felt still the same way that it was still like a separate person, but it was more of like, Lewis Theron was always me. We were together, though, and so now he is, like, stopped being a separate part, though. Like, he was a separate part, and now we are together, but the whole quote from Jordan being, I was writing this character as a crazy person, and I wanted to see how far I could push that. Like, yeah, okay, that's definitely a voice in his head, then. That's definitely what that is, like.
Yeah.
So...
There's too much supporting evidence to see it otherwise, but, yeah. So they hang out for a minute. Basically, they wait for everybody else to ride away. So she started unraveling it, but like she's like, I'm not going to keep doing that until everyone's over the hill and far enough away that when the explosion happens, it doesn't take them out automatically. Now, she should probably have been riding away herself that whole time, because that delay gives the Seanchan time to get to basically the Fist of the Heaven, flies in on Rockin, and is dropped off and starts to go through the portal.
Yeah, and that doesn't, it may be a short pass, but that ain't Thermopylae. You can't hold that one gateway with just 3 people, let alone one of them unable to fight.
Right. And, like, especially with damane on the other side. It's like, yes, if they were channelers versus non-channelers, maybe they could hold it for quite some time. But there's other channelers on the other side who are going to shield you and break your weaves and stuff like that.
And really, the only one that was at really fully fighting strength was Birgitte, because Aviendha was just as exhausted. So it is a bowman and somebody who can lob some small fireballs, which is why the fact that the gateway exploding is probably the only, it was so much more helpful than it turned out than they thought it would be.
Oh, sure, because if you imagine the gateway hadn't exploded, she'd unweaved it, let go of it, and what if it had just winked out, right? Or a flash of light. Right, then you've got 6 damane and a bunch of soldiers on this side.
Fuck.
And which, I mean, in fairness, there are like 100 channelers over the hill who would probably help you out. Like the closing of the gateway would probably, I don't know, because
it depends on if you can get the kin to actually fight. because it's
Right.
not like they've ever trained for any of that. At most, maybe you could work up the sea folk into a fury of, they probably hurt a lot of your people. You probably should.
Right.
There's the only ones you're going to get to fight. So go ahead, bye.
I think the Aes Sedai too would fight.
Fair, yeah. I forgot that they would in this case, because they could be swayed in the fact that your life is in danger if you don't fight.
Right.
I'm like, oh yeah, okay, let's do this.
So a bunch of arrows come through, and the commander, you get the typical "take them alive, you idiots," which is just like the biggest trope in any, like they start the underlings start shooting, and you get wounded, but you don't want to actually kill the characters, so you have to have them be like, "take them alive," and that stops the lethal force, even though your characters are already severely wounded, so they have the rest of the fight with that sort of tension. And
Yeah.
it's there's a little bit of
Hamming it up.
this feels very TV. Yeah, this feels like a TV show to me. This whole thing.
This could be like one episode on its own, is what this.
Totally.
But
Totally.
though it also feels up to the Seanchan of, yeah, of course they would want to keep what was it, Mirth Damane alive. Like that's their shtick.
That is their whole shtick. Is they're great enemies because you can go back to them time and time again, and they're never going to kill your main characters. They always just want to capture them and abuse them. So they're great repeat enemies for that reason, because you can, I'll get you next time, He-Man, right? Like, yeah.
Gadget.
Yeah, exactly. All the same 80s cartoons are in our heads.
Oh my gosh.
So yes, whoever's in charge basically stops the hail of arrows, and Birgitte and Aviendha, with arrow wounds, sort of provide a temporary stopping force.
The fact that they were able to stand up for as long as they did is just another one of those testaments to how hard they're both willing to fight.
I think also how powerful Aviendha is.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, Aviendha has some, she's not top tier, but for all we know, these damane are just normal, sort of middling Aes Sedai strength. We assume that they're quite a bit weaker than Aviendha. Or I assume they're quite a bit weaker than Aviendha and Elayne.
I mean, if nothing else, Aviendha is used to going into battle, so it's like, throw what you want at me. I don't give a fuck.
Right, there is that.
So, like, if there was anyone that I would want to be standing at a gateway full of channeling people trying to attack me, Aviendha is one of the higher up choices, because she'd be like, yeah, no, I'm not going to back away. We got this. Not that I'd ever want to be in that situation, mind you, but like, there's a short list of people who you bring into that kind of situation.
So we get, Brigitte's like, all right, we need to get out of here. I need you up on horses. And Aviendha's like, I need to be able to see. So she puts Aviendha up backwards on the horse, which is sort of that first... I missed the fact that it was actually Aviendha who's like, no, I need to see. And that led to the backwards facing. I thought Birgitte was actually like thinking ahead, but not, I like that interaction between them, where Aviendha's not thinking about like riding the horse backwards, because she doesn't think about riding a horse. She just says, I need to see.
I can't hit what I can't see.
Exactly.
Let that bloody thing go before I tell you, and you won't even have to worry about waiting for I need to skin you. I'll do it myself.
And then let her have a turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, actually skinning someone and then letting someone else have a turn in the Wheel of Time would actually be possible, because you could like skin them and then heal them and then like turn them over to somebody else, like peel off a strip of skin, heal it.
Especially with
And then
Nynaeve's
just
healing.
repeat. Uh-huh.
All 5 powers. You don't even have to worry about being dying of shock. You'll stay alive. I'll make sure of that.
I'll make sure of that. I mean, that's when we talk about the torture that the Dark One inflicts on people, like.
Yeah.
And true power healing. True power healing. That don't feel good.
True power healing. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the fact that it'll heal you all right, but you won't enjoy any moment of it.
Luke Blackwalter says, "Don't let Ramsay Bolton loosen Randland." No. Well, but that's I mean, that's what Dark Friend Aes Sedai basically are doing.
Yeah.
That's why everyone fears the Forsaken so much. Is basically that's what Semirog is. She's just Bruce Bolton with the one power.
Whew. It's like, yeah. She was a therapist who would torture people to fix their mental illnesses, and they were told either...
That's Grendel.
Oh, no, Grendel. That's right. Right. Just like, okay, you weren't even swearing to the Dark One yet, and you were already torturing people for therapy? What?
Mm-hmm. Semirog was sort of the... she did things physically. She was the... Wasn't she a doctor?
Yeah.
And then and she would exact pain for the healing, basically. And they would come out... She would torture people as she was healing them. But she was like, I can heal people that nobody else could. I think that's correct with Semirog. And that's why she really liked the pain that she caused. And that's why they essentially took away her doctorate and made so you can't be a doctor anymore. And then she turned to the dark side pretty quickly. I think she was one of the earliest to go.
Yeah, I think there was an ultimatum of you. I think you would be swearing on the oath rod. You get stilled, or her response was option 3, dark one.
Yeah,
It's like, whew, I mean, I'm not surprised you took that option, but good grief.
she gets to keep torturing people. Yay!
Yeah.
So Birgitte throws Elayne into the saddle backwards as well, into Lioness's saddle. Hops on her horse as well. So all 3 of them are on a horse. 2 of them facing backwards, which the horses have got to be like, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah, no, the horses go through a lot in this series, and not just Bella.
They really do.
Bella definitely goes through the most, but like, wow.
This is not a series where people get a horse and it sticks with them for a long time. This is a series where, oh yeah, a horse is a tool and sometimes tools break.
I think that's why Bella is the creator. It became such a thing, is because how did she survive 14 books? What? Just like the fact that the amount of luck she had to have that momentary Taviran-ness so many times.
You know, you're like, okay, yeah, Aldeeb makes it through and Mandarb makes it through because they're trained war horses, right? Like,
Where even is Aldeeb right now?
that is a good question because we assume she was with Moraine when Moraine went through the gateway.
Jumping
Quick Google on this one. So she, didn't go through the gateway with her,
Yeah.
but like,
Though when you said was with Moraine when she went through the gateway, my brain just went with, now Moraine is on a horse at the jumping through Lanfear, which is, I know, not at all what was going on there, but that would have been hilarious.
yeah, it does look like her. Following Moraine's disappearance and presumed death, she was stabled indefinitely at the Sun Palace.
Oh.
So, assuming that Moraine would be able to go back and pick her up if she went back to her native Cairhien.
That would have been incredible. She showed up at the last battle with Aldeeb, because Tom's like, yeah, we'll go stop by there.
They got gateways, why not?
Okay, fair enough. That would be less crazy than my first thought of you have to swing all the way from Andor to Cairhien and then go straight up. It's like, whoa.
Because that's the whole thing. Because once they get out of the tower, they have a gateway waiting for them.
Right.
Every day. And so that gateway opens up, and so that once you're with someone who can make a gateways, they can send you wherever the hell they want. So they're riding for the crest, which is a good idea if there's ever an explosion. You want Earth between you and whatever's going to blow up. Earth is amazingly heavy and can usually protect you from explosions, or at least shrapnel.
That's why embankments are such a good thing to have in case of an actual battle.
And so, but as they're getting there, Aviendha runs out of steam, and we start to get people coming through the gateway. And we talked about this, that, like, yes, there are people on the other side of the gateway. If it hadn't exploded, that could have been a real problem. But you have allies close by.
Yep.
And so just as they make the crest, Elayne gets shielded, which means she can no longer hold on to the threads, which I do think is interesting. It's not that she fails.
Yeah.
Although I do think that she would have, I don't think she could have pulled another thread. Like she says repeatedly, like she's using everything she had just to hold on to the one she's got.
Yeah. I mean, if nothing else, at first I thought maybe that was why she didn't get stilled, but then like Aviendha's fine, but like the big thing about that is that is the highest luck of any order, because that's the correct thread to break it on to make it go boom. Because then it was such a clean cut on her end. Essentially, it was, I'm holding the gateway, and now I'm not even touching it. And
right, we see it collapse in, right? Down in the meadow, the weave that had been the gateway fell in on itself. And so there's that sort of, we see that collapse happen. There's that time where she lets go, and there's time for it to collapse in on itself. And then I sort of imagine you hear this whoop, boom, like there's that second where it compresses down before it explodes that we see in a lot of the shows. That like just half second before the explosion.
Oh, earlier in this chapter, I remember something that has come up. I don't remember if it's been answered before on the show. I know it's been asked before about the gateways and the fact of what happens if you go through the backside. They mentioned that it is very painful. You would not be able to travel through it, though.
Yeah, I think it's like a gray fuzzy back. We mentioned it once.
Okay.
Before,
I know it's been asked before, and I had forgotten if it had gotten answered.
Not the first time we asked it, but I think we did eventually find what the back of a gateway looks like.
Yeah. It's nice to have such a definitive answer, though, so that way it's like, here, you have to ask there. I know the exact chapter you can look at now.
And it's also a good description. We sort of get this chaotic edge of the gateway, and I don't know if you can see behind me, but that is a depiction of this exact moment. And it does a good job of sort of this wavering. It's not a square anymore. It's just chaotic going all over the place. You've got Birgitte shooting arrows. You've got I think that's Elayne holding it.
Yeah, blonde.
And then that's Aviendha with a arrow through her shoulder throwing the fireballs, while the damane is shooting lightning through the gateway. So this is actually this is a very well researched and well done. Unlike Daryl K. Sweet covers, which is just not very well researched, this is just a really well depicted, accurate version of what's going on.
Yeah. Actually, when we were setting everything up and you had went to go grab something to drink, I thought it was just I could only see like zoomed out version of it. I thought it was like just something from a Magic the Gathering card. A radio pointed out, no, that's the actual scene. I'm like, oh, and like then I noticed everything. It's like, holy shit, that's really good. Mm-hmm. I just thought you'd gotten lucky with something from Magic the Gathering because they have so many different pieces of artwork, like bound to have something that's similar eventually.
I missed, it's been so long since I played Magic. It was a middle school thing for me, so it's been ages. I played once or twice, but it's for me. It was too much about spending money to collect cards. Yeah, and I was never into that. No. I was like, if I can't go buy a pack of cards and then play, like, I have to buy multiple packs of cards. That was sort of when I realized that it wasn't for me.
No, the online Magic the Gathering arena is actually pretty good with that. They'll start throwing cards at you. Obviously, they want you to buy more, but like you don't have to buy anything. And I just had fun kind of looking at all the cards myself recently, so that's why I'm even thinking about it.
Of all the artwork, yeah. But I know like that's a good source of a lot of fantasy artwork because they pay artists to create
several hundred pictures a year.
And a lot of times it's using some sort of energy or using some sort of power and all that kind of stuff. And it is elemental based, which like sort of links it to the Wheel of Time, 5 different elements and stuff like that, yeah. Now there's more elements in Magic than 5, but right?
5 colors and then colorless, so.
Gotcha.
And then they've really dove in the last couple of years about mixing them together. I say last couple of years from what I mean is they started in 2010. When I last
the last decade, that's fine.
I was just like, oh my gosh, the last time I'd played before this was 2010. Oh god.
So we get the explosion,
yes.
Right? This just massive explosion on both sides. Like we see it here, and then from the Rockin's perspective, it just devastates the land. The girls all get sort of secondhand exploded. Not so they get exploded, but they don't. They're far enough away, the earth shields them, and the horses shield them.
They braced for it a bit.
Yeah. It is weird, though, that the explosion kills a horse and breaks its back, but doesn't affect these tiny little women more than it does.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is maybe, because they were going up that embankment, maybe theoretically it was on a direct plane while it's the same thing of being like a little bit higher on like a low flying plane or like in a tall building rather than being at the ground level.
Here's something. Aviendha hurled herself from her saddle at Elayne, carrying them both off. Elayne had just time to see. So Aviendha and Elayne and Birgitte, they get knocked off. So the horses are standing on top of the ridge, whereas they jump off and they're on the other side of the ridge. Yeah. So the horses would be in full blast zone.
That makes a lot more sense. Like I was grasping at straws there for a second, but that makes a lot more sense. Oh, I just realized that's another one of the things that I'm fairly certain Robert Jordan has pulled from experience of a grenade explosion or artillery.
Definitely.
And that's how he knew that, you've got to have something in between you. You're not going to survive it just by luck. It's not going to happen.
They're lucky they didn't get burned out, and we get a little discussion. Lioness is dead. We get a discussion about how they could have been burned out. And she's like, well, at least I have a new weapon. And they're like, that could have been no more than a flash of light, even less. You cannot tell until it happens. And it could have burned us all out, right? It's not a consistent weapon. It could just backfire. Just as, we got lucky that the cards fell in our favor this time.
Yep.
And it opens with, I suppose I should have started with something simpler, Elayne said. I have a habit of leaping in over my head. And if there's not a more Elayne
you think,
quote
Elayne,
out there.
You sure about that? It's like,
Oh, you haven't even gotten started yet, babe.
Oh my God.
Like you've got so much in over your head coming.
I think that defines her character arc for several books. It's just like, I'm over my head. Woo, we're going swimming. I don't know.
Yeah, but the difference is Elayne goes swimming, and before she jumps in the water, she ties a couple of 20-pound weights to her ankles, and it's just like, I'm going swimming.
I need a challenge. Just being over my head, that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Been there, blown myself up a few times.
Learn to swim? I learned to swim in the deep end with weights tied to my belt. That's how I learned to swim.
Now I'm just imagining that's how Aiel learned to swim. It's like, no, you don't swim. You walk in the water. It's like oh my God. No, you're not supposed to.
See, now I'm picturing Pirates of the Caribbean with the skeletons
yes!
walking on the bottom.
Oh my God.
Yep.
The moment you said Pirates of the Caribbean, my brain immediately knew what you were saying. The best pirate I've ever seen.
So when Aviendha describes the actual risks that she was taking by hanging out with Elayne, Elayne immediately goes, "I want us to be first sisters. That was ballsy. Like, you risked your life for me. Let's make this thing official." And I'm kind of sad we don't get more of that with Min joining the three of them. There's a little bit, I was just listening to Memory of Light, and there's a little bit of like, well, it's a shame that we don't get to hang out with Min, but it's the last battle, so I guess she's our sister now. And there was just a little bit of like, I wish he'd made a little more effort to like have at least one scene where they bond.
Other than the literal bonding scene.
Right, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's like Robert Jordan's like, this is their bonding. This is all you get.
That's all. He does like to write love at first sight, but like Min and Aviendha do not fall in love at first sight. And they definitely need a little while to get there. And like, there is that help that Min gives with making Aviendha realize she should be a wise one, but it's almost like Min insults her. Like, that's not really it's like, oh, you happen to give the right insult at the right time, but that's not like a bonding moment to me. So same thing where I really wish the three boys had gotten together before the last battle, right? Like, give Rand, Matt, and Perrin a chance to sit down together and have the reunion. Give Min, Elayne, and Aviendha a chance to sit down together and bond, and like, not bond, but like actually like
get to know each
have
other.
An experience together, get to know each other. Yeah.
Yeah, just somebody I know on Twitter was just like, I wish I could have two girlfriends and a boyfriend too. It's why does this society prevent me from having this? And someone's like, oh, well, let me recommend this book. I know Joe got the book myself because now I'm curious, what is a good, because it's a polyamorous relationship, and so it is. Sure. So I'm like, let's see if maybe they follow some rules of, it's, Min and Rand and Aviendha and Elayne spend the most time together of the two groups, and so maybe that's, I don't know. I do think that Min could have really gotten along with Aviendha had they spent more time, because they seem more of the I don't take any shit from anyone sort, and I think they could definitely learn to get along with that.
And what was the name of that book?
Oh, it's Polysecure.
And the author?
Author is Jessica Fern. I realize now that this is going to be an audio medium, and I just showed the book to the screen. It's like,
that's why I asked.
I appreciate that. That right over my head. But yeah, so now I'm actually going to just research it. I'll probably just post it on the Discord and say, oh yeah, no, it follows these rules or it completely breaks this. And so, because I don't think we've had anyone who's actually in a polyamorous relationship give an explanation on if they've done anything decent or not. Wait,
Shall we call Dan Savage and ask?
No, you know what? I'm good. No, I don't.
So, we get this situation where they're full of arrows, they are beat up, they are exhausted, they've been pushed to the edge, they have been exploded, clothes are torn up, and they go stumbling down the hill until they see Nynaeve coming, and then they do that thing where they just collapse and wait for help to come. Again, this whole chapter is very TV tropey, so I'm imagining that trope where you come like walking out of the desert and you're like, you've been looking for water and you see someone be like, oh, who's that guy over there? Get some help, and the person just collapses because they know help's coming, and like once you know help's coming, that's it. Like, your energy is gone. Like, you just have nothing left.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely chances where places where that would be the case, but this is really convenient that it's right after the explosion you collapsed. But
I mean, assume once the explosion happened, Nynaeve immediately turned around and started running back.
Oh yeah. I think that would have been her signal of like, what the fuck did you do?
You let go of the weave, clearly.
Yes.
Like, she's got her skinning knife out. That's all I'm saying. It's like, if you're dead, shing! Like, I'm coming back to skin you alive.
Oh my gosh. And had they not exploded that gateway, she would have needed it for something completely different.
Completely different, yeah. Although, yeah, that's a good question. If they hadn't exploded the gateway, would she have been coming back? Would she have... It's really interesting.
Ooh, well, it depends. How quickly do you think the damane would have started using attack weaves of any sort? Because the first one of those that throws out, somebody's coming back.
And that gateway would have collapsed when Elayne got shielded, whether she was pulling it apart or not, because she didn't tie it off. So that definitely would have cut the damane off.
Yeah.
But I guess their goal would have been to take Elayne captive and then force her to open a gateway back.
Yeah.
Just going through that gateway is not a great decision, frankly. Like, it just really couldn't have ever. Even if they hadn't, it just wouldn't have ended well.
It was not
too many.
It was not a great tactical decision. They just didn't know what they were doing. They're like, get them. If you capture them, it's fine. And then what? What do you do after you capture them? Let's say you were able to capture them before they left the field, and nobody else of the clan or anybody else noticed. Then what?
You don't have a gateway back?
You don't even know where the fuck you are.
Right.
Like, For all they know, that Elayne burns herself out in this case, and then, like, there's no one to get them back.
Right. Oh, well.
Okay.
That's the end of that POV. We do get the last couple of pages is actually from the other side of the gateway, from the back of Arakan. And again, this is the only time we get this character, but I like this character a lot. Shulin.
Yeah.
And I think Nina Radius speculated, and I'm pretty much convinced that this is the second Rakan, right? The first one that they saw and attacked was Tuon and Maku. They had died in the Olive Grove. That was an attack by the Wise Ones that took down the Rakan,
yeah.
right? And then this was the second one that escaped, and she's still flying around, and she sees all of this going on with her partner.
Yeah. Yeah, even if that first one had survived, I don't think they were sticking around after that attack. They're like, let's head back and tell people what we saw here.
Over 100 Fists of Heaven were on the ground already, and more importantly, 6 Suldam with damane, and another dozen carrying shoulder bags full of spare Adom. So those were all flown in, is what my assumption. The second flight would be lifting from the hills to the south with reinforcements.
Yeah.
Better if more had come in the first strike, but there were few enough tow rockin' with the Hylian. So there's not that many. The tow rockin' are the really big ones. They're basically the troop transports. The Fists of Heaven are the elite fighters of this group. They're some of the best fighters, which is actually kind of a shame for the Seanchan, because some of their best fighters get taken out in this explosion. It's like,
oops,
yeah, like 100 of your most elite troops in one which is also probably why they're so careful. Is it's like, wow, those were some of our best soldiers.
Yeah, better to act as if we're being careful rather than the fact that we just lost a significant amount of our elite force. It's kind of those things. It's like if you dropped a bomb on a military base, you're like, we're gonna wait before we go back in that area just a moment.
Totally.
Figure out what that was.
So the reason they don't have a lot of Turakan is Haile Suroth and her entire entourage are being ferried down from Amadisha, but we never really see them show up. And I'm curious, I'm going to Google really quickly where she is, what she's currently doing.
Isn't she the one who took over that Aviendha island?
Mm-hmm. So she leads the Seanchan in the conquering of the Fortress of Light in Amadisha. So we did see her with Morghese. So she is up there. And then I guess they must have sent this group of Turakan to go fetch her from Amadisha and down to Abu Dar, which isn't really that far down. It's more like east. Interesting. So her whole entourage must be coming down on the back of Rakan.
Yeah, and it seems they do that with every time they capture a new area. They're like, yeah, bring in the other people, and you get to survey the new conquests.
That makes sense.
Wow, that is a lot. So I don't know why I thought Fists of Heaven, each one was like a group of soldiers, but now that it's individuals, that makes a lot more sense with the way that's phrased. Because I was trying to think, is that like an individual like troop unit, like 6 units? There's like 600, but individuals makes more sense with how they do it. There's like a Fist of Heaven being someone, Fist being an individual single strike.
Because I guess I have seen a fist being described as like 100 troops, right?
Yeah.
A fist of, white cloaks. It could be 100 white cloaks or something like that. Or, 10 white cloaks or some number. But I think it's a title, not necessarily a count.
Yeah, that's why I was confused, because if it was more than one, it felt like that's way too many people to get wiped out by this attack, but
Well, also just too many people to be carried by Turakan.
Yeah, absolutely.
The most lightly armored of soldiers, they were about as hard as the Deathwatch Guard. Some said harder. So they're lightly armored, but highly agile.
Shock troops,
yeah. Very advanced, good fighters, that sort of thing. But probably designed to get in before everybody else. Sort of, I think of them as like Navy SEALs, right? They're like super trained, super mobile, designed to get in there before anybody else, capture high-value targets, and get out.
Make it easier for everybody else to do their job. Yeah. It's more than 100 Merith damane is what they mentioned at one point. Where was that? Because they were really certain they were about to take a cash load of people who could channel.
They were?
Yeah.
They were about to. Yeah. If they hadn't escaped through the gateway, there's no way to get away from that. Although, going up against like 100 Merith damane with 6 seems Soldom seems not enough. Just a thought.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
Like, it does seem like they kind of brought a knife to a gunfight.
They probably thought that the numbers that they had were way exaggerated. Like, there's no way there's that many. We'll go check it out. Just send 6 of them.
But they did see that massive amount of power coming from the Bowl of the Winds. Like, you have to understand how much power that group can wield before you go,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, look at that massive fount of power. Let's go up against that with 6 Soldom. I'm just saying, it's not that... They really do seem like they're just like, oh, let's go get them and get money. They didn't...
Yeah.
really think through the consequences.
Yeah, I think that it was either just a straight bull rush of just like, let's hurry and grab them, or maybe they're like, oh, well, they expended a bunch of their energy and they're all disorganized, so it'll be easy. They won't be able to do organized resistance. Which, like, if they had actually been fighting, I think this entire force would have been wiped out one way or another.
Yeah, agreed. There would have just been more casualties among the kin.
Yeah.
Although the kin aren't much of fighters yet. They will be, but it takes them a little while to get there.
Though I do believe 100% both the sea folk and the ice that I would be like, yeah, we're gonna fight back, and we could handle 6 damane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the sea folk alone could do it, to be perfectly honest. Or just link again, right? And then you got this one mate, you know.
Let me show you a fist of heaven, just...
Exactly, just bam. That's the one thing, like, you can have that's why the Seanchan, it just never made sense to me. In battle, right, it makes sense to have individual channelers, because you have... Each channeler is so overpowered against a soldier, what you want is them to have their to have divided attention, so they can pay attention everywhere. However, when you have channelers versus channelers... one group of channelers who are in a circle can take out any individual channeler.
Yeah. It actually reminds me of the Bronze Age warfare. Like, if you've ever heard, like, the Bronze Age collapse, a lot of what I heard about is why it collapsed so thoroughly is their militaries beforehand were based on chariot warfare. Expensive to train, expensive to upkeep, but they would dominate it like foot soldier. The thing is that so what you would have to do is you have to bring these large armies to like defend sometimes if they like got in a bad spot or whatever else. So if you brought an army and these chariots, the chariots would just mop up another army by themselves. But you bring the other side brings chariots versus chariots, while regular army just kind of holds everything off. That's kind of what would have happened here, is it would have been a bunch of people running around, the warders who would probably be more than enough to hold stuff back, while the channelers did most of the fighting. Whichever channeling side came out first would just destroy the physical army of the other side.
Exactly, yeah. But you need both, but if you only have one, if you just have the channelers, they could get overwhelmed with the army. But anyway, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think Lan could probably menace a few Fist of Heaven by himself.
I think Lan could probably take out all 100 by himself. That man is a machine.
Gosh! I'm not trying to overestimate him, because that was my first thought. Is I think he could probably do it. They're all lightly armored. Like he fights. What was it? 8 Murdral at once or something ridiculous? It's like, oh my god, what the hell?
Lan gets a little overpowered with his fighting ability without any sort of magic, but whatever, it's fine.
Anime fighting style.
Yeah, because in the beginning, they're like, well, even Lan would have trouble taking out a Murdral, right? Yeah. And then it's like, did he really get that much better over the 2 years? He seemed like he was already pretty much a badass.
More direct experience.
Yeah.
That's all I can think of. Is just that, like, I don't think there was much Murdral fighting in the 20 years from the New Spring to Eye of the World. And there was a lot after that.
I think of it just as, like, in general, the bad guys get nerfed a little bit, right?
Yeah.
The terrifying Trollocs and Murdral in the beginning of the series are not that scary by the end of it.
No joke. I saw an article for the Wheel of Time show where like, oh, the Wheel of Time just showed they're menacing bad guys. Like they were talking about one Murdral. I'm like, you might want to dial that back as far as menacing. We're gonna have some bigger fish to fry on that one.
I think it really changes to me when the Dance With Me Shadow Man scene, when the 3 women pop out of the back and these Murdral are like massacring the Aiel, and you're like, oh my god, how are they ever gonna stop them? And the 3 women are like, crunch. Like all 3 of them could have destroyed the Murdral, and they all do it all at the same time.
Yeah.
And so there's this just like massive destruction of the Murdral, like it's nothing. And I'm like, oh, so Murdral aren't really a big deal anymore. Gotcha.
Didn't Nynaeve accidentally use Balefire in that fight, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, Nynaeve Balefire. Yeah, one of them, I think. Elayne probably used fire. Egwene crushed them, and Nynaeve used Balefire. So they erupt with fire out of their mouths. They get squished into little bits, and then Nynaeve, like, yeah, Balefire's
so much overkill.
So much overkill. That's like, yeah, I think we said in D&D, it's like when you just roll 10 times the amount of damage that would take to kill a bad guy. Like,
it's like roll for initiatives. Everyone gets 20. It's like, oh, uh-oh. Like, yes, there we go.
Roll for damage. Everyone rolls 6s. So her rider basically shouts out the farm, right? So there must have been that moment of like explosion before the shockwave hit them. And then the shockwave hits them. And there's this sort of really gut-wrenching like description of falling out of the sky. that sort of, again, like I said, this is a very tropey chapter, but that falling out of the sky and the 800 paces, 600, 4, 2, praying for their life, and then last minute, right before they hit the trees, they pull out of the dive and swoop back up again. So that last minute pull out before she crashes, again, very, very TV tropey, but still cool.
Yeah, and frankly, I think that if Jordan could have gotten away with telling everything before that drop, he probably would have told everything and let them die. But like the fact that there's also need to describe the farm was gone. Right, and that is a very one that is also extraordinarily tropey as well, but it's something we need to know that it annihilated both ends of that.
And we needed a witness, and no one on the ground could survive. And he didn't want someone to come in afterwards. He wanted someone to see the explosion and describe the aftermath of it. So that's why you have the tow rocket in the air. Yeah.
Because if it was somebody just coming in afterwards, you'd be like, oh, well, who knows? Maybe something just caught fire or whatever. I mean, like, this is we nearly died just seeing this. So, yeah, no, fuck that. We're out. So I'm going to go. You guys got your own invasion. I'm going elsewhere.
Timber got up under my feet and got to say hi. He's like, Dad, it's time for a walk. It's 5 o'clock. It's time to walk me.
I'm sorry, Timber. I hear my cats here meowing from outside the door, too, so I get it. They're like, let us in.
So her basically in that fall, at some point during the fall, I don't know if it was during the explosion or when they snapped out of it, her partner fell off the back and presumably fell to her death. The farm is gone. We see the destruction on both sides, both where the gateway was. The gateway blew up both places. It was actually in both places, so when it blew up, it destroyed both. Yeah, and then we sort of get this with this new weapon, these women who called themselves Aes Sedai were true danger. Something had to be done about them, something decisive. Perhaps if the High Lady Suroth was on her way to Abu Dar, she would see the need, too.
Oh, so this is where they got the idea to assault the White Tower. I hadn't connected. I thought they were just going to do that regardless. This is they can create friggin' bombs. Let's make sure they can. At least let's figure out how they do it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. I wonder, do you think they would have actually tried to go after the White Tower as soon as they probably would have taken a lot longer, but do you think they would have done it at all before the last battle? Had this happened like this?
Yeah, I that's one of those things where it's like, would they have done it earlier because there was no weapon, or would they have not bothered because they wouldn't have seen them as a threat, right? So that's tough to say. I prefer to think that this held them off for a while.
That's fair.
That this sort of, in a way, put a stop to their march across the continent, because they really don't take much after Abu Dar. This is the last city we sort of see them really take. We see them attack. Well, and part of the reason this does stop them, but the other thing that really does stop them is the end of this book. Rand takes Kalendor out and goes ham on the Seanchan, right? And on his own forces too, but it does stop their advance, right? He does just lightning the shit out of a whole, battlefield.
Rand is like, no one moves from this spot. This is where the line stands. You, everyone, you're not going any farther. Even my people, we're done here. Yeah, I think it was Rand just taking his ball and going home with it.
Basically.
You don't get to have a battle. I have the battle.
That makes sense. That they fight over Almoth Plain, but Almoth Plain is basically abandoned anyway. It's like they've already taken the spot. So, this is sort of not the end. Yeah, it's pretty much the end of the Seanchan expansion. The massive, the Hylene, the return. They lock down their lands. They start making art. And part of that is that Tuon ends up disappearing, and Suroth ends up looking for her, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on with them, and then Tuon shows back up again and takes back power.
But by that point, then we also have the dragon piece, and so too bad.
Right. So yeah, does change Abu Dar quite a bit, and we will return to Abu Dar in the next book with Matt, but it's going to be a while before we come back.
Oh, right. We drop Abu Dar completely at this point, and
completely,
Matt is hidden behind that wall.
He's under that wall for 4 years.
Oh my god.
For those of us who were reading in because he was this book came out and I was like, ooh, we're starting in Abu Dar. We're gonna find out what happens to Matt right away. Nope. We don't. We never go in the city. We never see Matt. No idea what's going on.
That was the meanest thing Jordan could have done. He was like, no, you'll find out. He could have just slipped a little bit in the epilogue
And to me, that's where the slog sort of began for me, because all I wanted to do this whole book is find out what happened to Matt. And so, in a lot of ways, I just I read this book from start to finish, and got to the end of it, and went, well, what happened to Matt? And it doesn't matter what else happened in this book. All I wanted to know is what happened to Matt. And so, in a lot of ways, I was very angry with this book when it came out, and I was like, oh, Jordan, you dick. So, Cayla, as I ask all my guests, I have to know, A, how did you find Wheel of Time, and how did you find the podcast?
So Wheel of Time, I started off years ago, and I actually had to go look which book it came out right after I started. But to start off, I had a friend this was in high school. It was my sophomore year in high school, and he had recommended me some other books. I read through another. It was a series about dragons, and like this kid raised a dragon from like everyone else would just go out and capture these dragons, and instead this kid was like, hold on, they keep laying these eggs. What if I raised one from birth? Turned out that yes, that actually works really well because you end up bonding with the dragon then instead of it being just this wild beast. So read through the first 2 books, was waiting for the 3rd book to come out, and I was like, is there anything else I can read while I wait? And he's like, so you're saying that series wasn't long enough? Here's the first 3 books of this other series. Come back if you want to read more. I'm like, first 3?
My ears. They are
Yeah.
picked.
And I had to go look it up. At the time I started reading, it was already up to Crossroad of Twilights had come out like a year or 2 before. Like, while I was reading, mass market paperback for Knife of Dreams came out. It actually came out a few days before my birthday, and so the same friend got it to me as a gift because I had enjoyed it.
That's amazing.
So
then I actually have a question for you. What's your opinion on quote-unquote the slog? Because you
Didn't have to wait through it.
You didn't have to wait through it, but you didn't have the whole finished series by the end. So you sort of got to read the slog all at once and get to Knife of Dreams without waiting, but you didn't have the finished product. So you're in a kind of a unique position. I haven't heard of a lot of people who start in that time space.
Yeah. And it was kind of mixed at that time for me because both it was, oh gosh, like, what's going to happen next? Why are we taking a lot for this one part? But then also, once The Knife of Dreams was out and we had kind of a conclusion of that, and especially once the full series was out, I've gone back and every time I've listened to the song, I'm like, this is really, like, I'm getting to know Perrin, I'm getting to know, like, Fail and all these other people, and it was just one of those things where it became, where instead of it being this long slog, it was more of just this very detailed introduction. The most frustrating part is I got to the end, and then I had to wait for more things, and I'm like, and the hard copy came out before I read it. When I was looking at it, I just was upset that I didn't get a chance to get on to the next thing. Finally, we finished this storyline. What's going to happen next? But that was more of just because I was, wanted another book in the series. More than like, oh, it's taking forever, which is what a lot of people complain about, how it's just that there's no context. Or I even was looking through Amazon to figure out when the mass market paperbacks were coming out, because nobody else keeps a list for some reason. There's a small list on Wikipedia, but it only shows like some of the UK releases. But a lot of people in Amazon still rate like, what was it, Winter's Heart. They're still very upset about that to this day, even with all the books out. I'm like, but just read through all of them. Then come back and like, really, the Wheel of Time should be taken as a whole series at this point, just because, like, it's a huge difference.
And it is a whole series, right? I mean, that's the thing, is unlike a lot of Martin series, it actually got finished, and we can consume it as a whole, and it does exist. And that's one of the things that I'm excited about the show. And I actually now want to ask you about the show as well, and your opinions on that, because, we're going to see Eye of the World from the whole book, whole series perspective, not just from Rahn's perspective as he moves through this narrow slice of the world. And I was wondering what you're thinking about that.
I am excited for the series. At SpoilerCon, I mentioned a few times, even if the show sucks, it means people will come check out the books. But also, like, it can't be as bad as Winter's Dragon. But also, Rafe seems to be, honestly, like, trying to make it seem like he seems to care. And that's the part that, like, I'm hopeful, and the few clips we've seen look like that they're well engineered, that they know what they're doing. Obviously, the pacing for that one clip seemed off, but that more is like 2 things split together, as has been mentioned by other people before.
Yep.
But, I mean, I think the fact that it is a finished product will give it a lot of extra room. And at worst case scenario, we just call it a different turning of the wheel. Same story, different steps.
Or a bad adaptation.
Yes, exactly.
But I agree with your initial point. It's like worst case scenario. I go to I say to my friends, listen, there's the show. It's not very good, but it's based on a great book series. Go check it out.
Right.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, it's a pitch for the books.
Yeah, because it's like they spent this much money on a series and it failed this hard. Why? Because there was so much in the books.
Yeah. It's a selling point. Honestly.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
Fine. It's fine.
The other little bit of news I'm excited to talk about, which is only vaguely TV related, but that's Rosamund Pike is narrating Eye of the World.
I saw that today.
Yep.
That is
And
interesting.
obviously, as a Michael Kramer and Kate Redding fan, I'm like, ooh, I mean, I love them. But I've also listened to, she narrated Pride and Prejudice, and I listened to that by Rosamund Pike.
Oh.
And it is excellent. So, I mean, she's done a lot of audiobook work already, and it was very good, and I really enjoyed it. And that's when the first thing I did when I heard that she was going to be Moraine is I looked up audiobooks that she'd done, and turned it out she'd done Pride and Prejudice. And that's the first time I'd actually listened to Pride and Prejudice. So all that was actually very good. I'm very excited about it, mostly because we get Eye of the World from entirely, it's all Michael Kramer.
Yeah, there's like 3 chapters for Kate.
Yeah. So I'm excited to hear that from a female's voice. That book more than any of the other ones, because it's not split. It is just Michael Kramer.
Yeah, that was why we asked Kate to read the Manetheren speech at SpoilerCon before. Not this SpoilerCon, but
Right.
the prior one. That's why we asked her to do it, was because we want to hear the story in Moraine's voice.
Exactly.
So now we're going to
exactly.
get that, which it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
People get hyped to read the books too, because okay, we want to see more of this show. Oh, the main actress is now reading the book for the actual series. I mean, that's a place to start out. That sounds familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And the audio quality will be way better because all the love to Michael and Kate into the early 90s, but you can hear the difference of them using analog magnetic,
Totally.
very
31
clunky technology.
years.
There's so many errors that they couldn't correct because it wasn't a digital medium, and they didn't have the pronunciations totally sorted out. And there's a lot of flaws there. And over this last weekend, I was up in the woods with some friends near Mount Hood, and someone was like, hey, so I hear you're into Wheel of Time. Can you kind of tell me about it? I, lost energy about through book 2.
Oh.
So gave a whole spiel, and I'm like, well, you really have to get to the end of book 3 before you decide how you feel about it. But part of the reason why this person wasn't into the books was because he did not like the narrators. Could not stand Michael's voice at all. And I'm like, I mean, you're wrong, but it's a preference. So
Right.
I can only harsh on that preference so much. So if Rosamund Pike doing the book again maybe makes it a little more appealing to some people to give it a go, then how can I be mad about that? Part of me is very territorial on Michael and Kate's behalf. You stay off their stuff. That's theirs.
Right. Yeah. But they would be the first to say Wheel of Time is not theirs. Right. They would be the first to say
Sure.
Kate even said anyone who has reread these books and spent an iota of time thinking about them knows more about them than I do.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I've gone through them once. It was a job. They processed it and they walked away from it. Right.
We keep bringing it up for them, but they don't bring it up for them.
No. Oftentimes it's so funny when we interview them. All we want to talk about is Wheel of Time, and they want to talk about what they're doing next and what they're currently working on, which is never Wheel of Time related, right? Obviously, they're done with that project, So there's always a little bit of not a tension, but
They have to dredge it up
priorities.
and be like, right,
They
I have
do.
those neural
They're
pathways back here somewhere.
Yeah. What did I do 30 years ago? Right.
Yeah.
Though it would be pretty fun to have in the TV show to have Michael and Kate Redding do the narrations
Oh my
for any of
God.
the scene
Sure.
scene transitions or anything.
Little recaps at the beginning of each season. I hope they cameo in it somehow.
But I get the feeling that will be Rosamund Pike for pretty much the majority of the series. That she will be the narrator even after she dies.
She's not dead. Everyone's going to
A
know she's
tragic
not dead.
death.
Nobody is
Yeah.
going to think she's dead. I mean, we all saw Gandalf come back. Nobody's going to think she's dead. And also, again, Lord of the Rings set us up to have the sultry female voice as our voiceover intro thing. This is now canon, how you do it.
Here's my question. When Moraine comes back, shouldn't she join the White Oddjaw so we can call her Moraine the White? I guess that would only work if she had previously been in the Grey Outjaw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, she could change and be like, call me Moraine the Green because now I fuck Tom, who fucks. But
Oh my gosh.
I mean, she's Moraine the weak and humble and traveling, I guess, rather than the powerful and rich and proud and all that. I don't know. But yeah, Cayla, so tell us how you found the podcast and why we're the best.
Well, actually, how I did find it, I'm not sure when exactly I downloaded it, if it was the same time I started listening, or if I downloaded, because I downloaded a bunch of podcasts at once at one point, and I'm like, oh, I could probably see if there's anything for Wheel of Time, but I put that off quite a bit from when I first found it until my friend started reading Wheel of Time in 2019. And I was going to start doing a reread of myself along with him and try to make sure I could, like, keep him up to date and let him know what's going on. Like, he's like, he asks questions. I can, like, oh, yeah, I just listened to that. I can do this. And then I realized I would easily lap him. So I'm like, I need something to let him gain ground because I know the Eye of the World well enough that I don't need to, I don't need to actually, I can let him get ahead a book or two. And so I'm like, well, I actually researched again and saw Wheel of Time spoilers. Wait, I already have this in my bookmarked? I opened it up, and the first thing was about the prologue where it's spoilers on 3,000 years. I'm like, oh, this is definitely in my wheelhouse. Let's do this. And so then I started to binge. I made a meme because I could make a meme.
Love the internet.
Genuinely, I have a Wheel of Time memes folder.
I have a folder. We got a folder for that. Don't worry.
Yeah.
We got memes.
Well, my friend recently just got to do my as wells, and I'm like, oh, here you go. Have the one about Ram being in a box because I can finally say that one. This is the right file.
So it's Merry and Pippin doing. We've had one, yes, but what about second binge?
Have we had second binge yet?
Because I'm going to go through because I am a good portion through what was it, Crown of Swords. Although I did skip forward and do chapter 29, and then I catched up on everything for for Path of Daggers. Mm-hmm. Though, because you guys took so long with chapter 3, I couldn't see. I had to miss the live recording of 4 and 5.
That's fair.
I'm part of a charity organization, and that was a board meeting. So I'm like, I have to go. Great. I can only miss so many of these. I'm gonna miss the one when Wheel of Time comes out, but that's just beside the point.
So much stuff is getting missed on November 19th and 20th and 21st. Like, so much is not happening in the world because of the show coming out.
Oh my gosh. But so I listened to, I had caught up on all the podcasts, and then I was genuinely just finishing chapter 6 as this came out. Although I had also gotten a mass market paperback and a digital copy, so I already read the chapter 3 times and then read it in context again today.
Nice.
Before I forget, though, because I actually meant to say this beforehand.
Yeah.
I have to wear this now because my roommate is wanting to start reading Wheel of Time soon, and she refuses to have any spoilers.
No, I'm not talking to myself. I am talking to Louis Theron. That's pretty good. Elayne. Yeah, it's like a swirled dragon with the nice.
I made a joke about the fact my cat is named Bella is a spoiler, and she's like, no, I can't even take that. You told me it's the first chapter. That's too much. It's like, all right, no spoilers it is.
Obviously, I don't get along with that kind of person. I like to spoil things. Liesl, my coworker, is reading Robin Hobb right now. Have you ever read Robin Hobb?
No, I haven't heard of that.
Oh, Robin Hobb is so good. It's the Live Ship Traders, the Fitz and the Fool, a bunch of other stuff. But I keep talking to her about it. I keep spoiling her things about it for her. And she's like, it's fine. I'm not a spoiler person. I don't mind at all. I don't think spoilers ruin anything. And I'm like, good, because otherwise I couldn't talk to you about fantasy literature. Because I have such a hard time figuring out what people... Like, I barely remember what I've read, much less, like, what other people have read.
Yeah.
And where they are.
And I've also heard where there's been a few studies on spoilers, and if you do spoil some stuff, people will... With spoilers, if you do know something that's happening ahead of time, you're not going to spend your time trying to figure out, well, what's going to happen next. You know what's going to happen next, so you can just, like, enjoy what's going on.
Enjoy it.
But some of that figuring out what's going to happen next is what people do enjoy, so, like
it's...
yeah.
The initial consumption of something, fresh and new, is a different experience than consuming something that you know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And if it's good enough, both are good experiences. And, like, one of the reasons I put Watt spoilers is I don't want to spoil anyone who hasn't read the books or doesn't want to walk into them. There's a big sign on the podcast. But once you're past that sign, once you're past that gate, once you're inside, I don't see any reason to keep putting up more warning signs.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, So that's my philosophy on spoilers is like, I'm not trying to spoil anybody. Same thing with like the show. Like, I'm not leaking anything that's come out about the show, right? There's nothing going on where I'm like, oh, I found these set photos and I want to get them out for people to look at. That's not my main deal. That's not what spoilers are to me. That's leaks. Yeah. And those are very different than spoilers. So I just want to talk about what's publicly available to everybody.
Yeah.
Without worrying about, someone getting up in my face and being like, that spoiled it for me. And I'm like, no, that's not what we're here for. We want to talk about it because we've all finished it.
Yeah. Yeah, that like, because there's a lot of people panicking because apparently the first episode of the TV show is going to air in Germany 2 days beforehand.
Ooh.
And so if people are willing to go, like, and I don't mean just like air in Germany, like German not Netflix, Amazon Prime. So you have a VPN, you could watch the show early. And it's just like, please, people, just like let people watch it first, then say stuff. Please, I get it, but yeah, I don't know.
I may have to get my VPN set up.
I've been thinking the same thing. I'm just like, but then I won't be able to stay off the internet for 2 days. I don't know.
Uh-huh. Well, I for me, it's as much about if I want to create content around it, it would be nice to have a 2-day lead on being able to watch it, create content, edit it, and drop it the day it comes out. That would actually be kind of a nice thing because otherwise I'm stuck like, okay, do I stay up till midnight on Thursday night and watch all 3 episodes and stay up till 3 a.m. and then try and create content on Friday with no sleep? Like, that doesn't sound like a good idea, especially not for what we do. So,
well, I guess
watching it all once
just means that you have options. Well, hopefully they also have the English audio or subtitles or something.
Yeah, I assume English audio track will be on there, but who knows?
Maybe they know what's going to happen, and they're like, no. It's for German audiences. You don't get to. Too bad, but who knows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's couple of kinds of content to create for the show, right? Me and Rady have talked about doing a sort of reaction type video where it's like, I think both of us want to watch it by ourselves for the first time just to enjoy it, right? But like going through a second time together and reacting to things and like talking about them and like doing just sort of a very light, oh, that's what that is, that's awesome, that sort of reaction video, but then going back and doing a more detailed sort of breakdown after some time has passed.
Yeah. Oh, Jedi Pants. The reason that Amazon is saying that they're releasing it early is because they're releasing Amazon Prime Video in Germany, and this is a promotion to help get people to actually use it because it apparently doesn't exist there right now, and it's going to be opened in November. So it's just like, hey, show up because this is a new service, and we're going to have this show you can't find anywhere else on the planet.
Which, I mean, in fairness, they're dumping a lot of money into the show. I don't mind if they use it to make a little money.
No.
Like, that's what it's there for. So, absolutely, do that, please.
They make a quality product that can make some money off of it. I just want more Wheel of Time. It's been so many years.
Well, I feel like that lady at the end of Titanic. It's been 50, many years.
Oh, yeah.
So, we left Elayne face down in the mud, and I was hoping we could... return to her.
My bad.
So much. Well, it was fine. Radia dropped out. I wanted to give her a chance to come back if she was coming back, but it looks like she is not going to be.
Though, as far as the slog, there was one thing that seems to have caught my eyes. A lot of people who have gotten through the series, at least through the first 4 books, where they stall is the middle of 6. Like, I think that if we didn't have Dumai's Wells, I wonder if we would consider Lord of Chaos part of the slog, too. Because, like, so many people just, like, stall out because there's all these details, and Rahn goes back and forth, and, like, nobody's keeping track of it.
And that's why I think that Fires of Heaven is the superior book.
Yeah, I mean, Dumai's Wells is a good thing, but Fires of Heaven, I mean, that battle was what? The percentage of the, like, if you took all of World War I and put it in one battle?
Right.
Which, when I realized, when those numbers were read out to me because I was here for the live episode of that, I'm like, holy crap. That is a massive battle, and then the last battle becomes essentially World War II all at once for the casualties they have.
Exactly. Yep.
Wow. Just kind of, it's all over the place from here.
Sure is. All right, well, that's the end of the chapter. Cayla, I want to thank you so much for joining me, despite the problems with the radio stuff and making it through this whole chapter. Would have been terrible to do it by myself.
Hey, I mean... I do miss having her on, but I'm glad that if it had to happen, it was a place where I could at least be of help.
Thank you so much. That was definitely saved me a night of work. So I really appreciate that, and your insight was great. I really do appreciate the good conversation we had, and thank you for coming to SpoilerCon as well. I hope that I meant to ask you, like, what did you think about SpoilerCon?
SpoilerCon is fantastic, like, especially with the fact that a lot of the people I knew and the people I didn't know, like, I instantly not only just had something to talk about, but, like, the fact that it felt like I never felt out of place the whole time.
Nice.
Like, I felt welcome, and, you know, it was an absolute blast of just things of... It also helps it was a subject matter I love a lot, so...
Yeah, all those things come together. That's great.
Which is also why, like, oh, they're going to have another Wheel of Time convention in Ohio. I'm like,
Yep.
I don't want to go to Ohio, but I'm going to do it. I'll do it. I'll fly there.
I mean, to me, where the convention is doesn't really matter because it's in a hotel.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right? Like, you know, what does the inside of a hotel look like? The same as every other inside of every other hotel.
Okay, though.
Right?
But Portland was beautiful.
Yeah. Portland was... okay. Yes. Yeah, Portland was better. Is better. I'll admit.
If I ever have to leave Texas for certain reasons, being trans being the operative problem there, Portland's on my short list of places to live if I have to leave. I don't plan to. I plan to try to make Texas a better place, but if that doesn't work out, like, Portland would be a fantastic place to live.
It's a great place to live. It is gorgeous. Now it's expensive, so you know that's the downside. Is it's becoming, because so many people think the way you do. They're like, sounds like a great place to go, including myself. Like, I am part of the problem. I'll be the first to admit. Like, I am a transplant, but it is. I'm more and more convinced that the housing prices have less to do with transplants and more to do with companies buying up houses and other issues. But it's expensive. The city has definitely grown in terms of cost.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I live in Austin, so that's not too much out of my realm of like I don't know which is more expensive, but like
it probably depends on what you're buying and where you're living and you know, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, big cities it's. Well, there's that wonderful catch-22 of living in a big city to be close to a job, but yet it's so much more expensive to live in a big city.
Yep.
And it's like, well, I can live out in the middle of nowhere and make no money.
Yep.
But it's cheap to live.
Yeah.
You know? That's why I came from I was in rural Virginia for 7 years before I moved to Portland, you know, and I've been here for 10. And so it was dirt cheap to live in rural Virginia, right? Like, rent was nothing, but I also couldn't get a job, you know?
Oh, yeah.
That was so...
at one point, the place where I went to college, it was $600 a semester with including water and electricity for my dorm. And I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. But the highest paying job there was like $9 an hour. I'm like, I hate all of this. What? It was also the worst customer service phone job I've ever seen. You know, those people who, like, all those commercials they have at night was like, call 1-800 to buy this thing. You're doing for multiple products. So you have to not only answer the phone, you have to figure out what they're trying to buy. And it's in the middle of the night. Nobody buys anything. So it's just like, oh my God, it's 2 a.m. Just buy the thing. Because they also pay on commission too. I'm like,
oh, wow.
So I'm like, I don't want any of that. I don't know. So.
Well, and that's the other problem is, like, the jobs you actually get in the middle of nowhere, they either, you know, they need to be done remotely like that, in which case they're just shitty jobs. And they're just looking for, like, cheap labor. And then you're competing with all the other places where there could be cheap labor, right? That could work remotely, and that's tough. So, it's a conundrum that I've puzzled over it my whole life. Is like, do you live where it's expensive but you can make money, or do you live where it's cheap but you can't make money? You know, and that's.
Yeah, just wait for us to get good internet everywhere, and then all of the jobs will be terrible and pay well, or everything will be expensive. I don't know. Well,
and what I found is a lot of the jobs that I like aren't necessarily internet based. You know, I love cooking, right? I love doing something physical, and the idea, you know, the idea of being at a nice restaurant in the middle of nowhere and making decent money just is not going to happen, right? Like, you know, would you like mayonnaise with that, sir? Is Beth.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?